You are the reason that this live show exists. Thank
Good
you.
Lord.
Thank you for that. That is definitely being answered on the show. Snappy, you are going to have to answer that. But welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the shop. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Dynasty Diagnostic Live Show, the first edition of the Dynasty Diagnostic Live Show. I'm here with you-know-who, Stompy, of course. We also have J. Mike Check, and we have Matt No L's Williams. Guys, what's going on?
Welcome. Any random noise I can just put together, just go for it.
Yeah, you need that drop for that DJ noise. That, you know, I mean, I can't even do it. That was like the worst impression of it ever. But you know,
did you try one more time? Please.
Did you guys when you try that, you press a car horn and you think it's gonna be all masking? And it's like.
Do you guys ever use like BearShare LimeWire and try and get like music and then you get like the remade ones with like all of these random like horns?
100%.
This is the Dynasty Diagnostic remix, people. Just in case you guys aren't familiar, this is just gonna be how this goes. But man, I am super excited to get this going on. Super excited to start with what we have going on for the new NFL season. It is a new day. Everything has changed. Everything is different. Tomorrow we will have football, real life, not college football. I, for one, can't wait. We're going to go through the slates, of course, as you guys would expect. We're also going to listen and answer some listener questions. We have the number one question. There we go in the chat. Jessica, thank you for that. We are also, as always, as you guys know, going to be going through a listener roster or two. So, guys, be very, very active in that chat. Let us know how it's going, and we might just select you to get a live diagnostic done on the show. But we are going to start where we usually start. We're just going to start with some opening topics. Some interesting things have happened since we last convened over here at the Dynasty Diagnostic. You guys all know that, of course. Today's news is big, big news. Two major contracts finally were penned today, both of which you should have been expecting. Jerry Jones is not the guy to listen to the analytics people telling him how terrible of an idea it was to pay Ezekiel Elliott. But now he has $90 million, $50 million guaranteed over 4 years. Jared Goff also is now one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. Guys, crazy things are happening. We have to start with Dallas. We have to start with the Los Angeles Rams and go over some of the implications of this absolute nonsense, at least in the case of Zeke, that has taken place recently. So we're going to go straight to Stompy first, and then we will round robin this question.
So, yeah, I mean, it's Zeke. He's the RB. I mean, he potentially is the RB1 this season, right? So I think, well, I just lost all my thoughts. I'm going to pass. I just literally lost everything I was going to say right there.
Starting well.
Ezekiel Elliott, football.
Chug it. Football.
$1, Drew. $1.
Oh my God. Sorry, that was.
See, this is why people only want you for your sausage, Snappy. This is why. Because I can't provide anything outside of that.
I'm all brawn, no brain today.
All right, let's go over to you, J. Mike, then. And we'll
excited to see Zeke back in camp or excuse me, I guess back with the team, not with camp. He skipped the whole camp thing. What I find most interesting about this is one of the things that I struggle most with in Dynasty is this idea of trying to strike while the iron's hot. And so I have a very hard time sometimes trading or making trades or capitalizing on things when things are going well. So we had a nice little window there with Tony Pollard. We figured Zeke would report soon. We didn't know that they'd pay him or that he'd even be first between Dak and Amari to get paid. Just goes to show how much we know typically when it comes to that. So glad to see Zeke back in there, and I firmly have him planted as a top 5 running back this season. He's going to be fantastic.
I was hoping for like an in memoriam video for Tony Pollard set to "I Will Remember You."
Oh, it's coming.
The video production here has let me down. So yeah, I mean, I guess signing who the heck is that guy? The retread that they signed to scare off Ezekiel Elliott to get some leverage. Alfred Morris. That didn't work. That didn't work, evidently. Alfred Morris can't replace Ezekiel Elliott. Everyone's saying that he's not worth the money. It's a team by team basis. It is a salary cap sport. You put the best team that you can afford. For the Dallas Cowboys, they absolutely had to pay him. If you look at splits, Dak isn't that much better or worse with or without Elliott. But after Amari Cooper came over, the team completely changed. Elliott was a different player with Amari on the board, just because the defense had to shift around. So they have to win now. They have a limited amount of time. Jerry Jones has a limited amount of time on the planet. And, while Washington and Giants are rebuilding from literally rubble, they got to try to take down the Eagles. And this was the right move. So, yeah, they had to do it. And I'm glad he's back. Just hope they do take it easy. I know he's on a pitch count. I worry about no offseason, like soft tissue stuff happening. So they say they're going to ease him in like they should against the Giants. So, yeah. Fingers crossed
Matt,
that everything goes good.
He's got that Cabo body, Matt. He's got that Cabo body. He's good. He's ready.
He was working out with Marshall Faulk, so
there we go. That's what
apparently he had a private quarterback down there with him as well.
10,000 yards guaranteed for Zeke, of course.
Oof. I mean, I don't think missing training camp. Honestly, probably missing training camp actually helps him to keep healthier, I suppose. So it's just one of those things where he's basically guaranteed top 5. I've seen some things going around about, well, Tony Pollard might take some passing work. I highly doubt that. Zeke is far more effective when he's on the field for all 3 downs. So yeah, I mean, he's back in the top 3 at the very least right now for me. I'm probably taking CMC and Kamara above him, but I think he's firmly square in that top 4. Top
Kamara
4
ahead.
Yeah, I love Kamara.
Even if
I actually have
sheer
a picture.
force of will.
It's irrational.
Okay. I was hoping it was a picture of you and Kamara together, like Photoshop.
Now he's filleting the picture. So first yes, now we go.
Kamara's my man. Yeah. He's my man.
Fair.
All right, for next show, can we get a picture of you and Kamara, like Sean Payton, but with your face on Sean Payton or something?
I think that's what's going to happen.
Yes.
Except it's going to have like a wedding gown over it. So anyway, this Zeke issue, guys, for me is really a case of what should have happened versus what did happen. In any other circumstance, on any other team other than the Dallas Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott, after everything that has happened with Todd Gurley, would not have sniffed this contract. It's just not going to happen because it doesn't make any sense with the current salary cap rules. Most teams spend less than they do on their entire running back core than they do paying their tight ends at this point. And that's something that, I mean, is kind of eye-opening considering the disparity in usage between the two positions. Now, I can understand that tight ends are asked to do a little bit more on the line of scrimmage. They're asked to block as well as be a receiver, but running backs are asked to block as well. So you can argue that they block, they run, and they catch the ball. But we're just seeing this position continue to be devalued and devalued and devalued. And this contract is legit. It's legitimate. It is a real-life thing that's happening. It's 4 years, $50 million guaranteed. The Dallas Cowboys cannot get away from this contract for at least 4 years. So no, it's not the $90 million number that's been reported. As you guys often know, NFL contracts are absolute, nonsense when they're reported to the media because they're trying to get the leverage over these players. But this is one of those deals that, I mean, they got to be sticking around. This is not like a Hollywood marriage type situation. This is a thing that is kind of built to stay. It's built to last. So I really do think that it would have gone differently, for example, if Ezekiel Elliott was a Los Angeles Charger. I think we'd be seeing the Melvin Gordon situation with Ezekiel Elliott. It just happens that his agent and him knew that they had the owner that they wanted to negotiate with. But, Snoppy, I'm going to vehemently disagree with you on Zeke being better on all 3 downs than his competition in his backfield. I don't know. I really don't know, because when I look at the numbers, when I look at the net expected points per target for a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, of all running backs in the last 5 seasons, Ezekiel Elliott actually had the worst net expected points per target in the NFL of all running backs with at least 50 targets in a given season. Ezekiel Elliott is not a great receiver. Now, if he's going to be given the volume to make him a productive one, that's something else. But they honestly could have got this done going a different route. And I think that they kind of took the easy way out with Ezekiel Elliott because they think they're in a win now window, which is the case. But I just don't think that it would have been that different with another player in that position this year. I really do think that this is a Jerry Jones deal. He has his fingerprints all over this. And I mean, as a Dallas Cowboy fan, at this point, all you really can do is hope for a Super Bowl in these next couple of seasons because things are getting very, very, very expensive. And this actually segues directly into our next topic. Dak Prescott is going to have to get paid soon. And Jared Goff getting paid, I think, was one of the steps to that happening. Jared Goff signed his own deal today. He has $100+ million guaranteed. We are not going to see Jared Goff without the magician that is Sean McVay anytime soon because he's locked up there. Blake Bortles is not going to get a look. And I mean, this is something kind of we all saw coming. But for me, if you're going to give Jared Goff $100 million+ guaranteed, you have to do the same for a guy like Dak Prescott. I think
why
kind of lines up because the alternative to Dak Prescott is Cooper Rush. And that is why that you have to pay that money. It doesn't necessarily matter what Dak Prescott is. It just it's what the alternative is in this situation.
But that's the alternative now, not the alternative next season. There are many options to be had next season. Marcus Mariota,
Josh Rosen.
We're gonna just start a fire on here.
No, I just find it interesting. Because I like where you're going to a large degree. A-Time. My only question is, at this point, they don't have to pay him because of the fact that even though the rest of, and that's the thing about this roster, the rest of the roster is seemingly ready. Quarterback is something that I don't know. I don't know the numbers behind it, but if you're not getting what you want from Dak or he's not coming in at a number you love, you can always go for a cheaper option and continue to keep that window open for your team if that's something that you think is viable. Now, I like Dak a lot, and Dak hasn't led the Cowboys to the Super Bowl like Goff did, and maybe Goff didn't lead them, but he got there. And so again, he's supporting your boy Cooper Kupp. So I'm curious. And listen, I like Goff. I really do. I like Goff. And contrary to what Bobby Koch says on Twitter, I don't have any hate for Goff. I just find it interesting that the Cowboys do have options, and if they don't want to pay Dak $30 a year, they don't have to. Just I don't know. I think it's possible they don't.
It's entirely possible.
I would have already held out. I'd be held out right now. The deal would have came down.
Exactly.
I would have been at a press conference live on Periscope. I'm in Cabo. I literally passed Zeke. I hopped on his jet. We talked about this ahead of time, in fact.
But the thing is, the salary cap goes up at an average of about $11 million a year. This is a thing that it's a moving target every single year. So even if you sign Dak Prescott to, let's say you give him a 3-year deal at the $32 to $33 million he wants. Fine, it's going to hurt initially, but I mean, in 2 seasons or in a season, that's going to look like a bargain. And you have a top 15 quarterback in Dak Prescott. All metrics actually support that at this point. So the question really is, if you have a team that is ready to compete now, it's already built up to actually have one of those championship runs, there's no point in breaking it down and starting all over again. That's the way I see it anyway. Does anybody else have any disagreements on that?
One thing, just going backpedaling to Goff, did this not catch anyone else off guard? Was I like asleep at the wheel? Was he demanding this? Are they just handing out money for the hell of it in Los Angeles? Like, is this something like, I know everyone's been rumored for Dak to be getting paid. Was there anything to Goff? This just kind of seemed like it's just, here's a bunch of money.
No, I mean, this was definitely something that was going to happen. Jared Goff is going.
I didn't know there was pressure for it. I meant.
Well, he's going into a season that would be his extension season. If you wait until next season, when all these new quarterbacks have signed, he's going to be in the class of the Deshaun Watsons, the Patrick Mahomes that are going after extensions. And then instead of paying him $30 million a year, you're looking at $35 to $40 million a year just to kind of keep up pace.
No, yeah, I guess I get the thinking. I guess it just I didn't expect to wake up and see, hey, there's a major signing. It's Jared Goff. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's actually a great move on the Rams' part because, like Eitan said, you're talking 30 plus million for Goff. You're talking 30 plus million for Dak, probably approaching 40 million sooner rather than later. And if Goff has another season like he did last season, he's going to be demanding that type of money. And so I believe 2020, he is going to be making 22, almost 23 million. It's a fairly shrewd move here because you're signing a guy before he starts to demand more money.
I guess the issue I have with it slightly is, and everyone's going to hate that I'm going to say this, so I'm going to say it anyway. I think he's due for a bounce back year, even though he had a great year. He ended poorly. People have a bad taste in their mouths. He's getting very, very undervalued. I'm not quite sure in this offense if he's that much better than Blake Bortles would be if he was subbed in. I think the Goff is better. He's definitely better, but I'm not sure the playoff chances take that a $30 million a year dip if Bortles were in or whoever.
Everyone on Twitter at Matt Williams, and the L's are actually sevens. At Matt Williams, the L's.
I wish I had someone else backing up on this team that was more friendly to the community, but I just meant that I think that you can plug an Alex Smith type in here and be fine. How about that? Is that a little more palatable, everybody? I'm not sure Jared Goff should be.
They're going to get you.
Hey, bring it on. I'm with what's his name from The Good Place? What's that guy's name? Blake Bortles. Let's go.
Yeah, I like how you just let that one drop. Like, oh yeah, sure.
and that was the thing too. And I guess, and I didn't even remember this because so much off season has happened. But the fact that Carson Wentz got paid in June, right? So Goff gets the extension that's just a little bit more than what Wentz got. So he got more total money in the contract. He got about 2 more million guaranteed. So it just again pushing the bar a little bit further. I just find it I find it hard to believe that Dak, and kind of circling back to Eitan's original point, I find it hard to believe that Dak that the Cowboys have to pay Dak. I don't know that I agree, and I like Dak, but I don't know that they have to because again, if they can not pay him again, that just keeps their championship type window open if they can go a cheaper route down the line, whether it be next season or beyond.
Why pay Dak when you can get Blake Bortles, right?
Oh my God!
Of course, Mr. Trubisky.
You could get who will be happy about that is Bobby Koch. Bobby Koch, bringing back the Bortles love. But I don't really like it if he comes back in place of Jared Goff, though.
Yeah, that might be tough.
You cut off one foot to save the other. You got to, sometimes make hard choices.
So the interesting part for both the Zeke and Goff contracts is what kind of sacrifices are going to be made here, because Amari Cooper's coming up. You would think that they wouldn't have spent a first-round pick on Amari Cooper if they didn't want to sign him, but they just re-signed the linebacker.
Jalen Smith.
They just re-signed was it Tyrone Smith? No, who is the left tackle?
Left tackle.
Lyle Collins, with big money.
Right tackle.
You just signed Zeke to huge money. Dak is up. So what happens here with Amari Cooper? Do they have that type of money to be able to maintain their defense and their offense while putting all of this money into like 4 or 5 guys?
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue with Dallas is they have most of the team kind of already signed up for a while. With this Dak signing, they have Dak signed, they have Zeke signed. Amari Cooper, they were going to play chicken with him anyway. They weren't going to sign him during the season. They were going to sign him at the end of the season, which for me is probably a bad decision as well, but it was something they were always intent on doing. That offensive line is signed for a decent number of years. At least on the offensive side of things, that team kind of is already where it needs to be. And I think, for that reason, yeah, there aren't going to be able to make many additions, but not many additions are going to be needed anytime soon in Dallas. So this might just be a situation where, hey, if you are intent on winning, if you want to win now, eventually it gets to the point. We always talk about this with dynasty teams. It gets to a point that, hey, man, you're supposed to win. It doesn't matter how pretty your roster looks. It doesn't matter how much talent you've accumulated. At the end of the day, you want to win the game. And if you're going to be able to do that, you need a competent quarterback. It doesn't have to be Dak Prescott. It could have been, I would say, 15 other quarterbacks in the NFL. But if it's the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL versus a backup talent like a Blake Bortles, then I mean that's why you end up giving the contract. But that is not the only thing that has happened this week. That's not the only thing that we think is big news this week. We talked about, and I actually am freaking Nostradamus on this. If you listen to the last Dynasty Diagnostic episode, I called this. I said Carlos Hyde was going to be a Houston Texan. Carlos Hyde is a Houston Texan. This is the thing that's happened in real life, people. Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde are supposedly splitting touches at the RB slot. They realized that they probably shouldn't go about getting their number one quarterback, Deshaun Watson, killed this year. So they went out and got him left tackle help in Laramie Tunsil. They now have Kenny Stills to serve as that third wide receiver when the inevitable disappearance of Will Fuller or Kiki Kuti happens due to injury. The Texans are going all out, and there isn't much competition in that division. Now, we talked about how this could all go wrong with the offensive line last week, Sam, but I think with the addition of Laramie Tunsil, who, in my opinion, is a top 15 tackle or a top 10 tackle in the league, I really do think that this is a whole new world for Deshaun Watson. I think that he's going to be upright a lot more this season. I think that we're going to see a very, very heavily weighted passing game in Houston. I just don't see them running all that much. I don't think they wanted to last year, like I described in our last show. But this is going to be a very, very interesting season. My question to you all is, let's talk about Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson. Let's talk about what Kenny Stills does to this offense as a whole.
Before anybody actually gives their take, on behalf of actual big news everywhere, I think you need to apologize for mentioning the fact that Carlos Hyde was big news. That's slanderous toward actual big news. big news Twitter's going to be after you, and I feel bad for your mentions right now, Eitan.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's monumental. I mean, this guy in San Francisco is a beast, right?
My Blake Bortles take is sad that you said Carlos Hyde was big news.
All right, fine. Laramie Tunsil, let's start there.
No, from the fantasy perspective, you like it. Obviously, Houston was charting out zero legitimate NFL offensive linemen. So to get Tunsil is awesome, and they paid the price for it, obviously. But the sneaky news behind all that is, hello Duke, hello Kenny Stills, how y'all doing? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the fun that can be had in Houston now. The fireworks, bring them here. I want them all. And ideally, you'd like to think that between those four receivers and the fact that the tight end position's always been an afterthought since Owen Daniels was roaming the middle of the field for the Houston Texans, I'm excited to see what this offense can be, and the fact that, as many have already mentioned, Kenny Stills is a piece that can be pretty versatile and can be moved all around the offense. We like the versatility of Duke. This could be a really, really fun group to watch this season. So I'm excited to see what happens. Hopefully Kiki Cutie can come back and actually be viable and get over his hurting body. But yeah, I'm excited. It should be good.
I mean, as the president of the Deshaun Watson fan club, I loved every second of this. I was just sitting there with a big smile on my face the entire time. The only thing is, it takes me off. I loved Will Fuller. This takes me off him a little bit. I still think he's a wide receiver too. Deshaun Watson loves him. I don't know what'll happen when Kiki is not ready to go. What they're planning on doing now that both tight ends are dead. Whatever happened to them. I'd love this for Duke Johnson because I think that he'll get a lot of the short yardage stuff if Kiki and the tight ends aren't around. That's really great. But I love Duke. I love Deshaun, obviously. The only other thing is Hopkins actually took a step back from wide receiver 1 to now Adams jumped him for me only because there's embarrassment of riches. He had a 32% market share. Now he has to come back to earth to the 28%. He's going to have to live on that. So, him and Julio and Adams were pretty close for me anyway. But yeah, I love the Texans, but I don't know what to do there with those wide receiver 2, 3, 4. I just will take whoever's sliding in the draft. I think I'm just scared off of Fuller now because I'm not sure how the targets are going to work out, but I love all of them. But like he was saying that or Eitan was saying, the inevitable happens with Fuller, Kiki, or both are injured. Kenny Stills is incredibly interesting because he doesn't have an injury history. So, if he could not become the wide receiver 3, he could become the wide receiver 2. So I actually do like Kenny Stills quite a bit.
So there was some news that Kenny Stills could be a big slot receiver in Miami before he was shipped out. So if Kiki's not ready, I mean, that seems like an interesting notion to me because you're seeing the NFL shift to big slot a lot. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Boyd. And so, I mean, if Kiki's going to be injured like he was last year, Stills could be a sneaky pickup late.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I don't necessarily envision a universe that Kenny Stills has much value this year in the events that, that we obviously see any type of health from just one of those two guys. I don't necessarily think it has to be all three. Deshaun Watson isn't the most accurate quarterback in the world. He is a quarterback that is very voluminous in his role. He's going to throw the ball a lot, but he's not particularly accurate. So I do think it's going to take some time to actually build up some chemistry. And I think Kenny Stills might have been traded a little bit too late in the game to actually have an impact. But for me, Tunzel is the guy that is the big game changer in this deal because Houston had one of the worst offensive lines in the league last season. And with Laramie Tunzel, that's going to be a little bit different this season. You would hope with also the addition of the guys that they've added in the draft, again, at the offensive line position. So I just hope that we just see a lot more upright performances from Deshaun Watson this season. And we can see everyone in that offense really begin to kind of build some built-in value for them, locked-in value for them for this year and for future seasons, because all these guys are locked up for the foreseeable future. I will say this, and Matt, this kind of makes me sad that you mentioned this a little bit. You kind of compare these two. I believe that Will Fuller is in year 5. I think they extended his 5th-year extension at the end of last season. I have to check that. In fact, if somebody can do that for me, that'd be great. But I think he might be in year 5. And if that's the case, then we might be looking at a situation where this guy just got Wally pipped, at least at the end of the season. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with how they actually allocate funds out there in Houston. But, I mean, Houston has money to burn. Houston has money for days, at least until they need to pay Deshaun Watson. So for the foreseeable future, this could just be a very, very high-powered offense from every single quadrant of the field.
Well, they better have money for days because they literally have nothing else. They traded everything else. They don't have a draft pick until 2055. But you were saying Kenny Stills came in a little late. I'm actually worried about Tunzel coming in a little late. He's going to be valuable regardless because he's left tackle. They had nobody. It's going to be great. I wish they had more time to work together. And if they were dead set on getting him or they were going after Trent Williams, I wish they would have just done it earlier if they were going to overpay over the moon, because Watson is used to being so afraid that he has to run around. And, that's maybe where he can end up getting hurt, where he's taking off too much and not being patient enough. Or maybe now that he has a legitimate left tackle, he can actually try to sit in the pocket a little more and be in a little safety and not move around a ton. So I wish they had more time to work together. So maybe Watson could get used to taking a more traditional route, taking his time, making more precise throws, like you're saying, is a little inaccurate. So it'll be interesting to see how it all works out with everyone being thrown, 2 very important pieces being thrown into the offense last second with no time to really work together.
And Eitan, I really like what you brought up about Fuller. The only thing is, this is year 4 for him. He's walking into season number 4.
Okay. So yes, this season, then one more.
Right. So that 50-year option that kicks in. But with that said, and I like hearing the chat. What's up, Ben? I don't know if the last name's Ebby. What's up, Ben? He asks, does Buddy Howell get any looks when Carlos Hyde falls on his face? Man, not if, when Carlos Hyde falls on his face. Savage.
The answer to this is no. Buddy Howell does not get any looks. He ran a 4.60. He has a 55th percentile size-adjusted speed score. He is, imaginably behind Amari Crockett as well. So yeah, it's not a thing that's going to happen.
Demario is not even there anymore.
Did he get traded to Miami?
Did he
trade him to Miami with the rest of their first-round picks?
No, he went to Oakland. He got
who's there then behind him? Is it Buddy Howell?
Practice.
Yeah, I think Buddy Howell's a Carlos Hyde trip away from some relevance. Perhaps he might be third string.
I think it's going to be the Duke Johnson show. I think it's going to be one or the other, just in terms of if one of them does go down, I think it's just going to go straight to the other guy because Buddy Howell isn't. I mean, he's a special talent, at least from what we can see.
Or
if I'm Buddy,
Jay Ajayi.
That's the more likely scenario. Honestly,
if I'm any of these guys, I'm looking out. I'm looking out for Duke Johnson. I mean, both tight ends go down. I'm thinking like a Tanya Harding situation where like we need to check his locker for a club. I think he's going around killing people. And it was like, I'm getting my chance. So we're going to Carlos Hyde to try to do this to me again. He's taking people out.
Well, he's seen the Carlos Hyde story play out. He's seen it firsthand. So yeah, I can see where that's coming from. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Houston. I do think that is one of the moves that Bill O'Brien, the GM, has actually done right. Now, I do think that they overpaid. They also took back a lot of salary on Kenny Stills' contract. It's not up after the season, I believe. There's one more year. It's like $9+ million, which is a lot for a guy like it's your fourth receiver. So that is definitely something they have to look into. But I mean, it is at least giving them a position that they needed at left tackle, which I think is the one wise thing that O'Brien has done this offseason. Acquiring Duke Johnson was a wise thing in and of itself, but paying a third-round pick to do so was not for me. But now we will move on to, before we actually get to this next topic, I want to talk a little bit about the ramifications on the Miami side of all of this, because I'm sure, as you guys know, we all kind of have a take when it comes to who we think the beneficiary of this Miami void is. It's Albert Wilson. It's Albert Wilson dance party time. It is Albert Wilson time. He is back. He is one of the most efficient receivers per touch in the NFL. I don't necessarily think that there's anybody that can challenge him for that now. Jakeem Grant was just re-signed as well, so I know he's going to be there for a while. But if Albert Wilson can find himself into the slot in Miami consistently this season, without Kenny Stills, who is a receiver that is a little bit more versatile, who could have challenged him for some looks, on a team that's going to be down every game because Miami, I really do think that this can be a situation where, you went in thinking that this guy was maybe a wide receiver 5, maybe a wide receiver 4 for you, and you can get wide receiver 3 numbers from him now.
Wide receiver 2.
Not going to go that far.
Yeah, I'll tell you, going that far. I am willing to eat a birthday cake in a singlet.
Nobody wants to see that.
Everybody wants to see that. Albert Wilson will be a wide receiver 2. Liz Loza wanted to see that, and she's a lot better looking than you, Todd. So
and let's be real. The very beginning of the chat, Jessica Bailey wants to see that. So.
Yeah, she wanted to see that.
She also mentioned that your singlet is better than my Bortles take.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I'll tell you, the person who's not the winner in Miami is Kalen Ballage, who, if he had, in his limited talent, any chance he had of fantasy relevance, went out the door when they literally got rid of everyone on the offensive line. He was already fighting an uphill battle to get carries into games where they were going to be behind by 1 million points. So, holy crap. I mean, I just don't want any part of him now, even though I think it's going to be still a timeshare of sorts. Jesus, that's a bad team.
You guys remember Kalen Ballage? Remember that time period? Remember when he was relevant? Remember when Tony Pollard was relevant? Remember when Darwin Thompson was relevant? Segue into our next question here. LaShawn McCoy is now a Kansas City Chief. A lot of people are taking this to mean that LaShawn McCoy is the starter in Kansas City. I don't necessarily know if that is the case. I have some data to back it up, but I will let our awesome guests, of course, and my co-host Stompy in on this before we get back to my take. So LaShawn McCoy versus Damian Williams versus Darwin Thompson for the prize in that Kansas City Chiefs backfield. Who takes it?
I have a direct comparison that's going to make Sam very sad. As a Green Bay Packers fan, this is what you're staring at. You love Damian Williams. You have a running back you love in Damian Williams.
I don't love Damian Williams.
No. I'm just saying.
I'm just somehow taking up the mantle of Damian Williams.
Let me paint my beautiful and sad
rationality
picture
in this goddamn fantasy football community. Ugh.
Let me paint my picture, buddy. You have a quarterback that you really like, that you're hoping for things from. And then there's this other running back who's not very good. Let's call him Jamal Williams. Comes along and he just takes all of the carries for absolutely no reason and just strangles Aaron Jones to death. because the coach is infatuated with him. That's what you're looking at Kansas City with LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams. LaShawn McCoy may not have left in the tank, but know what he does have? And a very annoying relationship with the head coach, just enough to annoy the living shit out of Damian Williams owners. And I think that's what we're looking at all year. He could suck enough to completely lose it.
He's so washed at this point. Like, I don't. The people here's the other thing. The people that seem to think that it's going to be a timeshare, where's that coming from? There is no precedent under Andy Reid that he gives a timeshare. Like, his running back ones dominate the touches, and it's by like a wide margin, like 204 to like 50 some odd carries, like 73 targets to like 26. Like, it's unprecedented that Andy Reid splits the backfield.
Hasn't he been on record saying it's going to be a running back by committee like a couple of times though?
That's fine, but he hasn't done it. This is where that coach speak comes into play. We have the historical data to show us that Andy Reid does not split the backfield.
No, I get that, and I agree with you. I guess it's not like a coded message like it sometimes is. He literally came out and just said, "Hey, by the way, this is going to be a running back by committee." Like, he just said it. So I mean, well,
first and foremost, the first time he said it was between Carlos Hyde and Damian Williams, and we see how that turned out. And then I don't believe
Hyde traded, by the way, and timeline wise, I can't remember how did between McCoy being released and Hyde being traded. That all happened at like the same exact time. Did they trade him knowing they were probably going to sign McCoy? What was the timeline for that?
Yeah, they traded him, and then just afterward they signed McCoy, knowing that McCoy was going to get cut.
So it was basically just a one in, one out.
It was a one in, one out swap, which is what I think people don't understand. Like, it's a one in, one out swap for Damian Williams as backup. LaShawn McCoy was the worst running back, one of the worst running backs in the NFL for the last 2 seasons. And I'm not saying this lightly. I looked at the net expected points per touch for LaShawn McCoy compared to all of the other backs, even the Bills' backfield. So if you want to tell me that, oh, well, it was a horrible situation, that they had, a terrible offensive line, Josh Allen at quarterback, okay. LaShawn McCoy had fewer net expected points last season than Marcus Murphy, than Chris Ivory, than every possible running back that has been in that Buffalo Bills backfield over the last 2 seasons by a significant margin. I mean, this guy's beyond washed. I don't think that means that he's not going to see work in Kansas City. I get what you're saying, Matt. I mean, Andy Reid brought him over. He didn't do that for no reason. I can understand that. But saying that he is going to challenge for the lead job, as we've been hearing all offseason from the coach, from the GM, from everybody surrounding the team, from beat writers, that this guy is going to be the starter, I don't think that this changes it any way. All I think is that this really takes any value that you had in Darwin and kind of puts that to the back of anything that you could possibly think about. Because for me, Darwin Thompson was a dart throw to begin with. Now you place him in a scenario where he's not only going to be competing with Damian next year if Damian works out this year, because he's signed for 2 years. There's one more season after this. He's also going to be competing with a 2020 back in that next class. And I just don't know where we see Darwin become anything on the Kansas City Chiefs. And one of the best things about Darwin Thompson was he was a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. So if this is a situation where he's gone, then I don't necessarily know what it is.
Aren't you on record saying that the Rams have 3 wide receiver 2s? Aren't you on record saying that?
I am.
Okay. Is it possible?
So
possible.
No. No, it's not, Jay. Mike, stop it.
Don't say it.
We know. Listen, I don't even have to. You know what's up. And here's the thing. I haven't done the research. I'm just kind of I like to think and process as I go. It's part of what I do. As we do that, is it possible that with the situation that we have, this is an offense that we could argue is as probably unprecedented in terms of Andy Reid's tenure as a head coach? Just off the top of your head, would you guys agree with that at least first?
No.
Like, as talented. to the rational people. To the rational people.
Being the apparently the guy that has to defend Damian Williams, will agree with that.
Okay, so wait, and I love how you mentioned rational as you like fly off the handle as soon as he was finished.
I
with
don't
the
ever.
It's like I'm rational. God damn it.
I'm also the most hypocritical guy in this community. So
you know what you are? You're the most self-aware. There we go. Now we got it.
There's that. I'll just say this. I think that it's possible that we're looking at one of the more talented total backfields that Andy Reid's had as a head coach. And so if we know that the running back spot is incredibly valuable for the Chiefs, we know he's got a past relationship with McCoy. I think that even though Andy Reid showed us a lot in his time as a head coach, we're still walking through unprecedented times with a situation that is as unique as he's had in his tenure as a coach. He's got one of his guys back. He's got a guy who was dynamic last season, and he's got an up-and-coming guy that we were that we're somewhat excited about after the preseason. And a time we were screaming before going into this offseason that Kansas City was going to draft someone to usurp Damian Williams in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then they drafted Darwin Thompson way late. And then they ended up cutting James Williams because they still wanted Damian Williams to be the guy. So we can want so badly to push Damian Williams out. We can want so badly for that to happen, but he's still standing after all of this. So I think that we're looking at a couple of guys who can be very fantasy relevant for you. I think they could both be our running backs twos. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I think it's possible.
I would just say that, I mean, Andy Reid is also the guy to like give Jamal Charles like 5 touches, just, because some days like that's the thing that Andy Reid actually does. And I just don't see how you're going to have multiple backs being relevant in that type of system. I really do think it has to be one or the other. But I mean, as Kevin Garnett once said, anything is possible.
I love where Damian's going in drafts now. The one thing that annoys me with the people that like apparently think McCoy is going to be a big problem is like people thought Hyde was going to be a big problem. And I just thought that it going to be some kind of share is going to cap, give Damian a little bit of risk. And I didn't like where he was going earlier. Now I love where he's going and he's great there. Why wasn't he going this late earlier when Carlos Hyde was there? Now you subbing LaShawn McCoy and all of a sudden that's that much scarier. It's like pretty much the same deal for me. I was never high on Damian Williams at his ADP. I loved his talent. I just thought that he'd get touches robbed from him. And that hasn't changed really at all for me, other than the fact that McCoy and Reid have worked together. You have that dynamic, but as Etan, rattled off, LaShawn McCoy is not good. And neither was Carlos Hyde. So it's annoying that all of a sudden now it's this huge deal. Everyone's really scared of McCoy. And now Damian Williams is going like a round later. I don't know. It's screwy.
All right, so guys, we got asked in the chats to go over a couple of rookie wide receivers in this draft class and see who is going to have the quickest impact here. I'm not necessarily going to frame the question that way straight. I'm going to talk about who we think is the best rookie wide receiver, and if either McCole Hardman or Paris Campbell is one of those guys that you want to own. Paris Campbell, of course, after the Andrew Luck retirement, and then we have McCole Hardman in the Kansas City supposed quartet of receivers, but we don't necessarily know what that end production is actually going to be for Hardman. So let's talk about Campbell. Let's talk about Hardman. Let's give our takes on who we think the rookie wide receiver to own is this season.
Well, I mean, it's really tough to trust Campbell, especially with the Luck retirement. I don't know how much you were trusting him anyway with Luck, but now with Brissett, they're definitely not going to be throwing nearly as much. So that's going to be an issue. Mecole Hardman, I mean, he's a Sammy Watkins injury away, and sorry, I believe J Mike's a Sammy Watkins.
Watch your dirty mouth. Watch your dirty mouth.
That's more of a going to happen rather than a maybe will happen.
When I threw my phone a minute ago, it hit Sammy Watkins. He's out for the year. He sprained his eyelid.
I want you to imagine this, though. Imagine Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman across from each other. Like, how are you going to cover that? That's wild.
Well, I mean, I think you can just cover that with strong press coverage. Now that's going to get you burned with Tyreek Hill.
Right.
But as long as Mecole is still learning how to play the position, I think you can stop him easily with press. If you try to, put him in the slot and give him free releases, that's a different story entirely. But I think if you have him at the line of scrimmage, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to produce early on, like it was for Tyreek, because he had to learn the nuances of playing the wide receiver position.
But I'm gonna throw a name in here that I think,
if you take my guy, Sam,
I'm gonna do it probably. I'm gonna throw out Preston Williams.
Okay, fine, good.
Hey.
So I mean, we obviously the Dolphins felt good enough about Preston Williams to trade Kenny Stills. Devontae Parker is. How often do we see fifth-year breakouts? They're in their fifth year, right?
Ask the Devontae Parker truth. They'll tell you.
I mean, okay, but here's the thing, though. Like the
Dolphins. Hold on. Let me. I get it, but let me finish.
The Dolphins are trying to lose games. If that matters.
The Dolphins are going to be playing from behind a ton. That defense is not good. They will be airing the ball out. We saw Fitzpatrick last year air the ball out. So, and the thing is, Preston.
Sam, you're
Hey, Tom, did you get upset and mute?
You hit the mute button.
Mute him?
No, I'm
muted
Sam's
myself.
muted. Yeah, Sam's muted. Sam,
I
gave that.
I
to
need to
Sam.
mute myself. But I was saying, Preston Williams. I understand he had a late breakout age, but he also had off-field issues at Tennessee. And he finally got his chance at CSU, and he put up a monster season. I mean, over 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns, and you can't dismiss that. Like, he dominated, and now he is in line to be the wide receiver 3, possibly the wide receiver 2 on the Dolphins that are going to be throwing a ton this season.
I've got a name that I want to throw out. And you talk about being slow to the party. I am probably the latest to the party. But you said for this season, Eitan, correct?
This season.
Okay. This season, if it's this season alone, there's one guy that I feel like might be his team's number one target in the pass game.
Debo.
Terry
That was my guy.
McLaurin.
Oh, I love it.
I didn't even going through this process all off season. I didn't love McLaurin at all. He's been killing it in camp. He's been killing it in front of the media. People love his route running prowess. And I was not a fan coming into the offseason, but he's done nothing but shine. And what I really like is the fact that, and this is kind of brutal because I like Jordan Reed a lot, but Jordan Reed's already hurt. So the guy that I thought would be funneling all of the targets to and through is already up in the air. So McLaurin has a big void to step into, and I think that he may be the wide receiver to own as a rookie for this season. Again, this season. I'm not talking about always, but for this season, he might be the one.
You're hurting me right in the Troy Quins. Right in the Troy Quins right now. I feel like I'm getting kicked.
I mean, but is it crazy? Wait. Is it crazy like the Bears did last year? Is it crazy? I think Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel, I think, led the Bears last year or something like this with like 90-some targets each. Is it crazy to think that Trey Quinn and McLaurin could both have like around 90 targets?
Oh,
and
absolutely
lead the
not.
team?
Absolutely not. That's
kind of what I think.
Yeah. No, that's definitely rational. That's definitely rational. The rookie wide receiver that I've been on all season, Matt Williams already ruined it for us all. It's Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel has been the one rookie wide receiver who I think has every ability to be the most productive of all of them. I don't think any of them are going to be particularly productive, but I do think that we've heard all that we need to hear from San Francisco in terms of Dante Pettis. Now, I don't think that means Dante Pettis is not going to open the season as the number one wide receiver. I don't think Marquise Goodwin completely goes away. But they have objectively one of the worst wide receiver cores in the NFL. And Deebo Samuel does everything Dante Pettis does, but better. He's a little bit less injury prone than Dante Pettis. He is a very, very good returner, just like Dante Pettis was. That's a reason a lot of people like him, because that skill translates, i.e. Tyler Lockett. But I really do think that he has an opportunity to be this year's breakout rookie wide receiver just because there is no real established talent in front of him. I also think that team's defense, at least on the back end of things, is going to be suspect. I think they have one of the best front sevens in the league, but if you want to pass on that team, if you can find a way to get extra blockers in to protect, you're going to be able to just completely chop up that San Francisco DB core. So it's going to be really, really interesting, the shootouts that they're in. I just hope that, by week 5, Nick Mullins asserts his rightful place as the starting quarterback out in San Francisco, and we see Debo become Debo.
I love that. I love it.
You guys took all the interesting names. You took them all.
I will, before we get over to Matt Williams and his rookie wide receiver, I will also say that I did get some information on some people liking Mecole Hardman potentially because of Tyreek Hill's contract situation and him not being signed beyond this year. I would just say this is why the franchise tag exists. I definitely expect that to be used on Tyreek Hill next season if he's not signed to a long-term contract. So I wouldn't necessarily think that that's a done and dusted deal as well. But let's get over to Matt. Matt, who's your rookie to watch?
All right. You guys took all the interesting names. If anyone who's going to make an immediate impact based on what their available role is right now, it is Mecole Hardman for me, because even in going to the future, like you said, Sammy Watkins, you're an injury away, and he's a cut candidate. Forget about a guy leaving. With his money, he's a cut candidate in the future. But
100% next year.
If we're going to talk about a guy who's an injury away, just because you took all the interesting guys that are immediately available, if there's a guy who's one injury away who I would like more than all these guys, it's J-Jaw, Arcega-Whiteside. If Alshon tweaks something, if they finally cut or trade Aguilar and there's something going on there, especially if anything happens to Alshon, I like Arcega-Whiteside more than everybody we just talked about. So just because I love Debo, I love Hardman, I love McLaren, they're all better options right now. But if there should be someone that in redraft that's on the very top of your waiver list, the guy you rush to the waivers to go get, I have an eagle eyes on this guy. I think that I like him more than everybody if there's somehow an opening in Philadelphia.
Now, J-Mac, I actually wanted to toss this over to you. Interesting things happening in Cincinnati. Stanley Morgan was the new hotness not so long ago, but he's kind of been usurped and replaced by another guy that's actually taking his spot. I actually forget the name of this wide receiver. I wish I had said
Damian Willis
on this, but there we go. What is the impact of his potential volume, at least while AJ Green is out, for a team that is probably going to find itself up against it for most of the season?
First of all, I just need to say, if the Sammy Watkins slander continues, I cannot finish this podcast. So just so everyone knows, when I just log out here in a minute, you'll know what's up. Second, as far as Cincinnati goes, I didn't see what I wanted to see in the preseason from them in terms of creativity in the play calling, which was somewhat disappointing. I was just hoping for more. Maybe Zach Taylor saving it. I don't know. We'll see. It's to be seen. But what I find interesting is the fact that Eitan, you will not be able to live down the fact that Tyler Boyd is still going to be the number 2 wide receiver on this team when Damian Willis is the one. Look at his face. No. he got so upset.
That was a lot of shame. I think the screen just went dark. What happened?
Oh, man.
No, but I find Willis interesting, and I find the fact that just how he's kind of walked into some opportunity up early is fun. But Tyler Boyd is still the son as far as the passing game goes. What I find more interesting is the fact of what it looks like in the backfield with Gio getting extended. Giovanni Bernard getting the extension. I'm curious to see how they leverage the backfield to be as good as it can be, because both of those guys, obviously Mixon's ultra talented. Gio Bernard's really good too. He's not a bad player at all. He does most everything well. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Damian Willis should be a lot of fun, but I don't see him offering the fantasy value that one would hope unless the Cincinnati offenses unlock something that we don't anticipate coming. But I don't see him being extremely relevant up front.
Now, I will ask this. I mean, what does this mean for the future of AJ Green? if AJ Green comes back, this team is kind of already down in the dumps. I personally think Ryan Finley is a better quarterback than Andy Dalton at this point, at least from what we've seen in the preseason. I know that's a small sample size, but Andy Dalton's not a good quarterback, so that's what I'm basing this on here. I mean, honestly, like Blake Bortles versus Andy Dalton, it'd be close. It'd be very close for me.
You're being so disrespectful right now. So disrespectful.
Hey, man, I just had to get you back to the Tyler Boyd sake. But
I don't even like Dalton like that. That's, on behalf of Dalton and his family and everybody in Cincinnati, you foul. You foul for that.
But in the event that this team is, say, I don't know, 2-4, and it looks like AJ is just about to come back. Number one, is that a situation that you throw yourself out in, that you throw your body in? Number two, is this even a situation where a team that probably is on the path to rebuilding is going to want to keep around a guy that's in the last year of his contract like AJ Green? Anybody can answer.
I think they're going to be a little farther along than 2-4, but I don't know. It'd be tough to try to move him if that's what you're talking, because he's got a foot injury and the kind of capital they'd require to probably trade him off the team. It would be a difficult thing to swing mid-season. I think they'd want to. I think it'd be hard to come across. But yeah, they're if things are going down south, they are definitely on the brink of needing to rebuild quickly. So yeah, short answer. But to backtrack real quick, I'd like to talk a little more Sammy Watkins slander. I drafted him in the Kings Classic draft, and then I felt the need to. I believe.
That was beautiful.
Come back.
Nah, I'm done. This is horrible.
Come back. I was just saving that just for him too.
That was fantastic.
Oh, man. I love it.
Yeah, I didn't really have a point to that.
What about you, Sam?
he's still in the comments. So yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense for a wide receiver needy team to trade for somebody like that, but it's like what is AJ Green going to go for, like
third rounder?
I mean, do you think he's even worth the third rounder at that point? Oh,
I mean, I would think, yeah. Green Bay, give up a third rounder for AJ Green. Do it.
That actually be the perfect team.
Hey, you didn't even listen to my whole story. I drafted Sammy Watkins. I drafed him. He's on my team. He's on my team. I have him on my squad.
Somebody wave their hands when Matt's done. Just let me know. Let me know.
I love Sammy Watkins.
I'll wait.
Oh, man. I love it. All right, so let's move on. Let's switch gears here. A couple of questions really quickly before we get to the rest of what we have to go over today, before we get into today's modified 5 points, actually many more points than 5. Stephon Diggs, hamstring injury. This is a guy who has played 14 or fewer games in almost every season he's been in the league, except for last season, I believe. Also, when he actually does play, when he's a little bit nicked up, he has been much less effective than some of the other receivers that have played through injury, like Julio Jones, like Amari Cooper. These guys have played through injuries and still produced through injuries. It seems like when Stephon Diggs is banged up, Stephon Diggs is seriously banged up and he's not the same player out there. Now, I don't know if that's just because he has Adam Thielen on the other side and a banged up Stephon Diggs versus a healthy Adam Thielen is no contest. That might be a lot of it. But, I mean, outside of that, like we already know, a lot of these receivers are going down. We know the plantar fascia with Amari Cooper. AJ Green is obviously not going to play for a while. Stephon Diggs now is dealing with his own injury issues. What is the real value of a guy like Stephon Diggs for this year and moving forward if these injuries are just going to continue to be a problem for him and for the Minnesota Vikings on a team that is supposedly just going to run all of us into oblivion this year?
I mean, Stephon Diggs, he's still extremely valuable when he's on the field, whether as a decoy. I mean, yes, I get like he is less of a player when he's injured. I think that seems like a very obvious statement now that I just said it. So
I mean, that's not the case.
Ignore that. but yeah, I mean, I think he still has his value. It's just he is more of one of those guys that like he's starting to turn into one of those best ball guys, that at the end of the season, he's got fantastic numbers. It's just that he's so frustrating to own because there are those weeks that you just don't know what he's going to be because he's injured or he turns up on the injury report. And I wouldn't trust him as a wide receiver 1 at this point just because of those injuries. If he's my wide receiver 2, I'm ecstatic. If I could get somebody, let's just say like DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs, I feel pretty good about that. But Stephon Diggs is my wide receiver 1. You better have some very solid backup wide receivers that are going to get you points, like Stephon Diggs and Julian Edelman, where Julian Edelman is going to be the floor guy that's going to give you 15 points every week. He may not give you the heights that Stephon Diggs does, but at the very least, he will level that out for you. So right now, yeah, like he is being taken where he belongs, which is like the 3rd round-ish right now, because you just can't rely on him week in and week out.
And it's funny, we talk about obviously Sammy Watkins, but just ultra talented players who get hurt often, which is kind of a bummer. And the difference with Diggs is the fact that he gets hurt, but he's not missing a lot of games. So the last 2 seasons, he's played in 14 games, started 14 games. So he's giving you the majority of your fantasy season, but he's still dinged up week to week, just like Stompy was referring to. Currently in August ADP for DLF, he's going as wide receiver 10, right behind Amari Cooper, before Keenan Allen, Antonio Brown, and Adam Thielen. I still love Diggs. Still think he's ultra talented. The philosophy that they're trotting out in terms of wanting to be led by Dalvin in the running game is still fine, because in the event that they leverage play action similar to what Seattle does a lot of, they can hit big plays and still have incredibly fantasy relevant and even what's the word, like raising the ceiling of your team. That can still be the case for both Thielen and Diggs in the event that they don't get the volume that we hope for. So Diggs is still someone that I'm excited about, really nervous about the fact that he's already hurt. And yes, you should be concerned. And I just love the fact, Stompy, that you were looking at my Trade Addict 6 team when you mentioned your wide receiver 1 being DeAndre Hopkins and then having a wide receiver 2 like Steph Diggs. So I appreciate the shout out and your love of my squad. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like Diggs still because he's in that weird spot. Like he said, he's going in the middle of the 3rd, in that weird teardrop area where you're either taking him and you're taking your chance, or you are reaching probably. I mean, in Dynasty, there's depending if you're in redraft, you're kind of reaching for, I don't know, Godwin, Ridley, unless you're just going like you believe in Boyd and Lockett, who are, have large targets.
Let's go down that road. Stephon Diggs, Tyler Lockett. Let's go down that road.
Are we talking redraft or Dynasty?
Either one of them, actually.
Take Diggs. I take Diggs and I take Diggs for both.
Man.
I just because I think Lockett is safer for sure, but like I think Diggs has the if anyone's gonna like break down a 1st round value, it's Diggs, not Lockett, in my opinion. So
I'm so conflicted.
I like them both, but I don't know.
I'm so conflicted.
It's a good comp or a good like line to draw.
Yeah. I don't see Lockett being worse than wide receiver. Like, I don't know, like at worst, I feel like Tyler Lockett's floor is like mid wide receiver 2. But Diggs, I feel like from a floor perspective, could give you like wide receiver 24. Like wide receiver 2, basically back end if he's hurt or dinged up, whatever it is. Golly, that's hard, Eitan. I'm gonna say Lockett at the expense of turning in my Diggs card. That if it means I have to sacrifice my Steph Diggs card, I'm gonna say Diggs. If I'm keeping it 1,000, I think I'm taking Lockett.
Yeah, I mean, it's the funny thing about this is Tyler Lockett hasn't been healthy until last season either. I mean, granted,
first healthy year.
Yeah, but granted, that was a broken leg. I don't know how much of it was soft tissue. I would have to look it up. But Diggs is just soft tissue, and as good as he is, and I believe Matt Harmon has called him the best route runner in the league, if he can't stay healthy, it's just one of those things where volume is kind of a king at this point, and Lockett has that volume floor in Seattle. And I agree with J Mike. It's just one of those. This is super difficult because, like I said, Tyler Lockett has not been healthy his entire career either.
Don't you think don't you think Diggs' ceiling is so much higher than Lockett's, where wide receiver is so deep that you can, I think, in that spot, try to take the shot on the guy who has a chance at superstardom type year, and you can always back him up with some boring, safer plays later than take that. Because I like Lockett too. I think I'd rather go for,
yeah, but what's boring safer plays though? Like, I mean, if we're gonna compare Lockett to some other like high floor guys like Julian Edelman, that's about it, right? That's all you can really put on that kind of tier. And I would trust Lockett more as my wide receiver one. And damn it, J-Mike, I just read that. I would trust Lockett more as my wide receiver one than I would Diggs, if that makes sense. But if I could somehow pair Diggs and Lockett together, then that's a different story, where you have a floor like Lockett and then that ceiling like Diggs, and they kind of counteract each other. And that's really how you should be building your teams in the first place.
I just think it's so funny that we're considering Lockett a floor play. Like, this is a guy that has been Will Fuller-esque his entire career, and all of a sudden now he is the safe floor play because of circumstances out in Seattle and all the other dead bodies they have playing wide receiver for them. So it's going to be very, very interesting what happens this season. But yeah, I think that's a lot closer than it might have been even just a couple of months ago. All right, so now
with August ADP, just throwing it out there, I know I mentioned Diggs was at 10, Lockett's at 24.
Wow.
Go sniff around for Tyler Lockett if he's going for a wide receiver 24 in your leagues. That's absurd. That's nice.
That's absurdly
That's nice.
That's not even buying at his floor. That's buying underneath his floor this year, I think.
Well, now I'm going to go put in some bids or some trades for Tyler Lockett. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Now we're going to talk about what we didn't want to talk about. We're going to talk about LaShawn McCoy. Actually, no, we already talked about LaShawn McCoy. Let's move on to Austin Ekeler on the Los Angeles Chargers. Austin Ekeler is going to be the starting running back for the Los Angeles Chargers this year. One of the most efficient running backs per touch in the NFL last season, kind of Duke Johnson-esque in that regard. Austin Ekeler now has a quarterback, is going to be the main running back for a quarterback that is known to pass to his running backs, and Phillip Rivers. It's Danny Woodhead all over again. The question is if he can run between the tackles, but looking at him and Justin Jackson, I don't necessarily know which one is better at doing that. This might be just a situation where the Chargers significantly alter their game plan to be a little bit more pass heavy than they have in years past. I've been saying this, and I've said this on previous Dynasty Diagnostic episodes. If you're listening, Phillip Rivers threw the least or the fewest amount of passes that he's thrown in the last 10 seasons or so last season. This year, that can change significantly. Even if Austin Ekeler is going to be effective, you would think that a lot of that value does come through the air. So let's talk about Austin Ekeler. Is this a guy who could potentially have long-term value? Could he survive the 2020 coming RB apocalypse that is and will always be?
I think he can. Last year, in a small sample size when Gordon was out, he didn't look too great, but it was a very small sample size, and I think people aren't giving him the credit he deserves. Like you said, he's very efficient when he touches the ball, and I don't really believe much in Justin Jackson. I think they will skew the game plan to be more pass-heavy, which will work in Eckler's favor, but I don't think Gordon's coming back. The only thing more uncomfortable than the relationship between the Chargers and Gordon at this point is probably between the Raiders and Antonio Brown with that whole crap. With that text, if we can talk about that, that was real. Yeah, I think Austin Ekeler, as far as ADP in redraft, he's going a little above where I'd like him to be. But if we're just talking long term, I think he has a chance to show off this year. I think that he's going to be given every opportunity to be the guy. I think that they would like nothing more than to, when they're working this through with Melvin Gordon, to have a guy that they can run the offense through. And I think they're going to at least give him a shot. I wouldn't bet on it, but I definitely think he has the talent to do it.
I think, the issue with the Chargers is contracts coming up. I believe did Phillip Rivers just sign one, or is he due?
He's due.
He's due. Melvin Gordon was due. Keenan Allen's due. Joey Bosa.
Keenan's doing a year. Keenan's not due yet. He's doing a year.
Right. Well, but I mean, it's coming up. Melvin Ingram's coming up. Like, it's just, they are coming up on a lot of big contracts. And I would not be surprised if I could definitely see them drafting one. But Eckler has proven himself as that pass catcher, as that satellite back, and maybe even satellite plus back. And I honestly would not be surprised to see them go one more year with Justin Jackson and Austin Eckler here. But regardless, I still think Eckler has a role. Unless they get somebody like DeAndre Swift, Travis Etienne, Eno Benjamin, which I don't know how many of those guys are going to be first-round talents, but I definitely don't expect the Chargers to be in the first half of the first round next year. But then again, I don't know if they would go with a second rounder either. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, I believe in Justin Jackson, and him paired with Austin Eckler. I think they would be perfectly fine. But then and they could cover or get or cover some of their other needs in the draft. But then again, this draft is so deep with running back talent that I just don't know.
Yeah, Sam, play this out for me. What if Cam Akers is sitting there in the 4th round and the Chargers are on the clock? What happens?
I think they would be stupid not to pick him. I think he's extremely talented, but I do believe that Eckler still has a role there. But I mean, that's a fascinating question.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I just think that if there's a team out there that's built to pass to the running back outside of the Saints, this is the team to do that. So I really do think that Austin Eckler finds himself in a very fortuitous situation with the Melvin Gordon holdout. And I think that the Chargers are prepared. This is not something that is sudden to the Chargers. This is something that they've known all offseason. In fact, they probably knew this last season with the types of things that Melvin Gordon was saying to the media. I can't imagine that those conversations were only restricted to the media. He probably had those same conversations with his GM at the time. So I really do think that the Chargers kind of had a mindset that this is what they were going to do all season. And the fact that they haven't gone out and they haven't signed the Carlos Hydes or LaShawn McCoys or all these cuttable backs or haven't added one of the guys like Jay Ajayi or like any of the other guys that are getting workouts, I think that shows a lot that they are confident with what happens this year. And I do anticipate it to be a higher volume passing offense than it has been in at least the past couple of seasons. But let's move on. Let's talk about.
Can we talk about one thing real quick? The freaking offer the Philadelphia Eagles gave. Can we talk about that for 1 second?
Right. Yeah.
Listen.
They gave a fantasy football offer there. That is an insta reject fantasy football offer.
Jordan Howard is as good as Melvin Gordon. Okay.
Easily.
Hey, and a mid-round swap.
That was the kicker for me. It was like, okay, if you gave me Howard in like a 2nd round pick, maybe not a 2nd round.
What is mid-round
but
swap?
a 3rd round?
Are they talking like 3-4? Are they talking like 6?
No,
7?
like a 4-7, probably something like that. Yeah,
here, we'll swap 6. We'll swap our 6 spots.
That was brutal.
What an offer. But I mean, what does that say about Miles Sanders? Are there any alarm bells kind of based on?
It was such a low ball offer.
Is that just
it wasn't a serious offer.
Hey, I'm going to probe.
Let's see how desperate these guys are, and then maybe we can flip him. It was a Kareem Hunt thing. Like, let's take value for where it is, and we'll just, get a good, valuable player and go from there kind of thing.
I think that's fair. That's fair.
All right, moving on. Sorry.
No. That was great thing to bring up. Let's talk about my boy, Robbie Robert Anderson.
Ruby.
He is currently dealing with is it a calf issue? Is it a
calf strain.
I don't know. He deals with so many issues kind of season after season. But he is dealing with that. Behind him, obviously, you have the Nigerian Nightmare, Quincy Enunwa. You have Chris Herndon, who's going to be coming back in week 4. You also have Jamison Crowder, who is going to be available for about 4 games of the season. So what do we think that this means for Robbie Anderson? And that's not to mention his crazy cornerback wide receiver matchups that he has during this season. I mean, I don't have it right out in front of me, but he is going up against a gauntlet this season. We already saw last season, even in a little bit of the preseason that we saw him play, Sam Darnold is targeting that slot position. He's targeting those shorter routes. Do we think this spells doom for Robbie Anderson, or do you think those guys that were drafting him in the 6th, 7th round are going to be happy that they did so in a couple of months from now?
I mean, I think so. He practiced in a limited fashion today. The issue is the type of player that he is, where he's more of a downfield threat. He's more of a speed guy. These soft tissue injuries linger. I mean, we saw it with Will Fuller. We saw it with Marquise Goodwin last year. So that's the issue that I'm seeing. And then you add on top the strength of schedule against wide receivers. They are ranked 28th this year in terms of fantasy points for strength of schedule. So I like Robbie Anderson. I think he is the wide receiver 1 there. It's just one of those things where it's like, is he going to be more of a decoy? Is he going to take those number 1 cornerbacks out of play, and then they're going to feed underneath because they have a plethora of underneath targets. They have, like you said, Quincy Enunwa, who he'll play more of the flanker role. They have Jamison Crowder. They have Herndon. They have Trayvon Wesco, who's better than Herndon. They have Lev Bell. They have Ty Montgomery. So they have
that was much better than mine.
A ton of guys that can play underneath. So is Robbie Anderson going to be more of the take the top off the defense and let them play underneath? Is the question.
When it comes to
2 minutes straight.
Yeah. When it comes to our dear friend Roby, which you trip me out when you say that every week, Eitan. Oh man. As if I recall correctly, you drug me through the mud when my last appearance on the Diagnostic with my co-host Gabe Gearing on the Open Bar podcast. You drug me for saying that Robbie Anderson was a viable option for the roster that we were analyzing, that we were assessing. And all of a sudden, how the tides have turned as we ask about the ceiling of one Robbie Anderson. I just think that, and I'm a big fan of this offseason. A lot of people have been beating the drum, and Sigmund Bloom specifically, about thinking differently in fantasy. And one of those things being, which one of these things is not like the other when you're looking at offenses, or when you're looking at wide receiver cores, who offers you the biggest bang, or more importantly, who offers you the most value, the most that you can squeeze the sponge for and get, because Robbie Anderson offers something in that wide receiving core that nobody else does. He's the one that's going to take the top off the defense. And if there's any big plays, any long shots to be had, he is the one that most likely is going to be getting those from Sam Darnold. So I like Robbie Anderson this season. As much as people might like Crowder and Enunwa, they're both fine players. But Robbie's the one that actually gets me excited about being the one who can do something different than everyone else in the offense. Like, they need him to be him if they're going to maximize their offense.
Yeah, I like Robbie Anderson a lot too. I actually do love Crowder because, I mean, that's what I actually like the Jets in general. I think they're going to be a good offense. Someone had posted one of those things on Twitter. What's a bold prediction you think that is, maybe going to go wrong? Be really bold. I said the Jets have a top 12 player at every position, meaning, Darnold, Anderson, Herndon, and Bell. Herndon obviously out 4 games, but top 12 in tight ends, not really that hard to crack. Robbie Anderson I actually thought was the hardest one, mainly because Eitan's saying the cornerback schedule is what gets me. I love Robbie Anderson, and I say I like Crowder because him and Darnold seem to have this crazy connection in the preseason, which, I know Noon was there too, so it's confusing. They have a couple of the same guys that do kind of the same thing, but the connection with Robbie Anderson, Roby, that he had is insane. He had it to cap off last year, and then it just disappeared, but they ended so strong. that I'm excited about taking him there. So he's going in like a weird area where there's a couple of interesting guys. The injury doesn't really scare me off as much, but like everything you guys are saying, he's a difference maker. He does different things that other people on the team. So yeah, I like him. And I just kind of like the Jets offense in general. But yeah, I like Robbie Anderson.
All right, guys, let's now get into what we are here to do today. What we are here to do for most of this season, actually, we're going to get into our inaugural season-long experience. This is actually not necessarily going to be completely Dynasty focused. We're going to focus on the slates that we have every single week. So we're going to talk about some starts, sits today, and we have the NFL calendar in front of us. So, of course, we have to talk about the first game on the schedule. The first game coming up tomorrow. We're going to talk about why David Montgomery is the guy that you want to be playing in tomorrow's game, why Mitch Bortles could have some value, why Aaron Rodgers might be a guy that you want to target, although that is not something that I necessarily need to say because Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to be a guy that you're going to target anyway. But I anticipate the Chicago Bears winning this game. I anticipate Green Bay trying to get back into this game. And for that reason, I really see the Green Bay running backs like Mitch Bortles, as well as not the Green Bay running backs, the Chicago running backs like Mitch Bortles, as well as the Green Bay receivers and Aaron Rodgers being the plays this week. Do you guys agree or disagree with that sentiment?
First of all, how you just going to say Mitch Bortles with a straight face twice in one monologue?
Every time, every single time.
Go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
I'm in the midst of writing my starts for week 1 start sets. Yay, the season's here. I hope you guys enjoy it. But I have two Green Bay Packers on their sits, and it's Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Aaron Jones. I don't think you obviously can't sit Devontae Adams because Devontae Adams garners double-digit targets every week. But when it comes to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I think the general idea here is that you can't start secondary and tertiary skill players against the Bears. So the Bears were fantastic last season. Obviously, on defense, they did lose their defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. They lost their defensive back coach, and Ed Donatel. Thank you, Bears. As a Broncos fan, thank you, Bears. I think I speak for Aton, too.
And you remember that name. I mean, look at that. This is a whole new world for us, man.
I know. But they were fantastic against the pass. And while there has been some turnover, Bryce Callahan also came to the Broncos. Thanks again, Bears. They're still probably one of the best groups in the NFL. And I'm just not, until they prove themselves or prove different, I'm not going to be starting guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like Geronimo Allison against the Bears. And then Aaron Jones, I mean, they were also, I believe they were number 1 against the run last season. And as much as I like Aaron Jones as a running back, as talented as I think he is, I'm just, again, if I have better options than Aaron Jones, I'm sitting Aaron Jones. And that includes guys like, let's just say I have a Tevin Coleman. I'd be starting Tevin Coleman over Aaron Jones this week.
All right, so I'm going to get this out to you, J. Mike, and you and Matt could actually answer this next question for us. We're going to go to the next game on the slate, the Chiefs and the Jaguars. Who are the hot starts here?
You want to take Sammy Watkins?
I mean, I know you'll leave him for me to talk about. So yeah, of course.
All right. I don't know. I'll go start Nick Foles. I don't know if that's a secret, but I mean, D.D. Westbrook is the man. I think Shark and Conley are pretty dangerous too. Leonard Fournette can catch the ball. They're going against the Kansas City Chiefs. Haven't really improved on defense that much. It's going to be a shootout. I think they're going to be a better offense to Jacksonville than people give them credit for. So yes, Nick Foles, start him up. There's not much more to say. I mean, it's just people might be scared of him. He may be undrafted in your league if you're streaming quarterbacks. That's definitely the way to go. If you have a lower end quarterback with a tough matchup, don't be afraid to pick him up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Dede is an obvious start, but in general, I love Nick Foles.
Yeah, in the same vein, if you're loading up Nick Foles week 1, you've got to load up D.D. Westbrook, and Leonard Fournette.
There we go.
My man Fournette. Listen, we always talk about, hey, Fournette's fantastic when he's healthy and he's great. And listen, I'm a Jags fan. Full disclosure, love me some Leonard Fournette. Guess what? Leonard Fournette's healthy. It's the first game of the season. He's not good. And listen, he might disappoint you first game and fool around and get hurt. If he does, please don't come after me. Please don't come after me. I didn't do it. But this is the time. This is the time to start Leonard Fournette. But Dede and Leonard, load them up right now. And I'm just curious. And again, I'm not saying you need to sit your Chiefs, but let's think about this. Everyone wanted to be so upset about the Jags defense from last season. Remember, the pass defense was still really good last season, just like it was really good 2 seasons ago. The problem was they weren't getting the amount of turnovers that they did the season prior. So it's not that the passing defense is bad. Jalen Ramsey's still there. They've still got Calais Campbell. Oh, would you look at that? Josh Allen from Kentucky's in the building. Let's go. It's a good group that they get after quarterback. So be wary with your Chiefs. I'm typically all about the Chiefs, but my fandom is starting to leak out a little bit. I'm sorry, Eitan. I couldn't help it. You guys got to stand up real quick for the Broncos. I'm doing it for the Jags real quick.
Since you're back, just real quick. Hopefully we can run through this real fast. I had this conversation with Sam a little earlier. I know Eitan agrees with me already on this, but Leonard Fournette, when I did the Jags show for the show I do, I'm not going to plug it since I'm on your show.
Go ahead and play it.
Daily Blitz. The Leonard Fournette.
What's that?
The Daily Blitz.
I'm doing it all subtle, and now you're making the thing. Daily Blitz, everybody. FF Statistics Podcast. Listen, daily. It's beautiful.
Listen, guys. I don't want to talk about my show. I'm okay. Daily Blitz. I wasn't ready for, but guess what? Daily Blitz.
Oh, I didn't prepare
every day,
anything.
all season.
Whip out my notes. Leonard Fournette. I was just going on him versus Dalvin Cook, and
damn it!
Everyone loves Dalvin
I
Cook.
hate this.
Possible top 5 talent. Where they're both 3-down backs who's going to get goal line work, who can both catch the ball, or on teams that apparently want to run the ball down your throat. I'm not sure why everyone is so pumped on Cook, and those same people aren't as pumped on Fournette, which I think they're very similar players. One's going dramatically later in drafts. So I just want to see what your thoughts, because you have a different view. People that are, if you're a fan of a team, you tend to be more realistic about your own players. Sometimes some people are complete homers, but I just want to get your take on Fournette, basically.
I'm going to kill myself. That's what's going to happen here, because I've had this discussion way too many times. I've had it with Eitan. I've had it with James Catullus.
Now we're having it with J-Mike.
No, it is not the same. Not the same.
No, what do you think? No, seriously, between that, what do you think of your boy, like, versus Dalvin and that whole thing? Like, what do you think is realistic? What do you expect out of him?
From a pure rushing standpoint, and again, we're not going to predict injury. From a pure rushing standpoint, I think their numbers could be comparable. The question is going to become what happens out of the backfield, and is it possible that Mike Boone or Madison eat into Cook's work at all? Which I don't necessarily think they will, but I think that they're pretty comparable. Cook and Fournette are a couple guys, ultra talented, getting the bulk of the work in the run game. If you think that the Vikings offense is better, you might think that he has more touchdown potential, but they're pretty similar players. They're pretty similar situations, and they're both ultra talented. I'll say that.
I just wonder. I liked Terrell Armstead a little bit better than now Devine Ezigbo backing up Leonard Fournette. So I just don't know if Devine Ezigbo is a guy that is going to get any work in this Jacksonville backfield. And if that's the case, does he potentially eat into Leonard Fournette's workload in just the same manner as a guy like Alexander Mike?
No,
not at all. Nobody's taking the bait. No,
nope.
I don't. If we're talking about the backups, I'm not on the train that Armstead will jump in there too. I think it's boring Alfred Blue jumping in there.
He's on IR. Actually,
yeah, sadly.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sadly, he's on IR. Yeah,
that's why Ezekiel came. That's why they signed another Nigerian nightmare. I love it. Just keep doing it. All right, so Falcons, Vikings, Salmon. This is one for you and I. I already know that you're going to be talking about some little running back whose name I just, lose. He plays for Atlanta. He was the leading rushing champion at one point. I just, he's not relevant anymore, of course. But we're going to.
You do know J. Mike is part of that train too.
Are you? There we go. We got two Freeman truthers. But now let's actually just talk about this game specifically in its own vacuum. Minnesota defense, I think, is going to be much improved from last season. I also think that the Atlanta Falcons defense is going to be improved from last season. But when I have both of these teams kind of up together, I really do think that the plays that you really want to be a part of this particular game, I think there's one guy in particular. There's not a cornerback on the Atlanta Falcons that can hang with Adam Thielen, especially if Stephon Diggs is a little bit banged up, if he's not necessarily going to be garnering the same workload that he usually does, then I think that this can really be a career game for a guy like Adam Thielen. I don't think it's going to be easy to rush against that Atlanta defense. They got Deion Jones back. They got some safeties back as well. So it's a different proposition from last season, of course, but I really do think that Adam Thielen is going to be the huge play in this one, and that Kirk Cousins, just by association, is going to be a top 10 quarterback this week as well. Where do you stand with this?
Well, so I actually think it's going to be higher scoring than the over-under is, and I have to look up the over-under here. The over-under is 47 and a half right now. So it's actually relatively higher scoring, but it's indoor. It's two good offenses. I mean, let's be realistic. That's two probably top 10 offenses going against each other. And I agree. I think you, even if Diggs is injured, I think you almost have to start him in this game, because they do not. I mean, I believe they have one cornerback that is okay. But outside of that, Atlanta's secondary is not fantastic. I do like Keanu Neal, but beyond that, I don't think you're really trusting anybody. So I think they're going to be throwing a decent amount. I think the Vikings are going to be able to score pretty well against the Falcons. Now, the Falcons will have to keep up, and that's where I think Devonta Freeman comes in, is that he will get the volume through the air. Because he is a pass catcher there. So while I don't know how well he will do on the ground, I do think he gets enough volume that he makes it worthwhile to start, at the very least, as a flex. But I mean, if you're starting him as your RB2, that's perfectly fine as well.
All right, guys. Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Corey Davises against the Cleveland Baker Mayfields. Who wins this game and why?
I'm gonna take this one.
It could be ugly. While Tennessee's defense is something that has been pretty good. The Browns, I think, run away with this, and it will be ugly, and it will be just the Nick Chubb showcase.
Yes,
it's gonna be biblical. It'll be ugly. So I just start your Browns with reckless abandon, any and all of them. Just do it.
I'll say one thing. Going for the Browns, the Tennessee defense is pretty good. If anyone plays DFS, if for the first week scoring on pretty much all the formats, especially DraftKings, Nick Chubb is being priced down like he's some kind of RB3. So who cares who the defense is? He's like a must start, like chalk play in my opinion for all cash games. So that's like a totally separate thing. But the Browns defense are pretty good. I don't know what to expect out of Tennessee here. They can make it ugly. But I expect the Browns to win. It has the makings of a letdown game. I could see Baker being like pumped out of his mind, coming out screaming at people, and Tennessee just giving him fits. But I mean, start all of your Browns pretty much, except for David and Njoku. There's no reason kind of not to. I don't see a real reason why there'd be someone else on your team where it'd be worth sitting anybody. I don't know what to make of the Tennessee offense yet. If Mariota is healthy, they could be interesting, but they have so many targets. I don't know if I'd be really excited to start any of them against the Browns, because who knows what Adam Humphries is doing. He's not going to bring all those targets over from Tampa Bay with him. Corey Davis is going to see a dip down. His quality targets may go up. I don't know what to expect there. Delaney Walker's healthy, and Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis. So, yeah, basically, I'm all interested in the Browns, and I'm not really interested at all in the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be definitely interesting what happens with the Tennessee Titans this season, just at the quarterback spot. There is a legitimate situation where the backup might be better than the starting quarterback in Tennessee. This isn't a hot take at this point, but on top of that,
I love it. John Hogue is screaming right now.
We also have to, I guess, just take a little bit of time to just really, take a moment for these players that were some of the most talented players in the draft at the wide receiver position that it ain't going to happen for this year. N'Keal Harry is one of those guys. It's not happening. I'm sorry. He's already on IR. Second most talented wide receiver in the draft for me was A.J. Brown. He is a Tennessee Titan. I don't necessarily know what is going to happen with A.J. Brown this year and moving forward. Now, let's just, play a little game here. Let's say that maybe, somebody is a little bit of a rational thinker in NFL circles and Tua Tagovailoa as the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans next season. If that's the case, do we think that A.J. Brown can have some type of value? And do we think that, is now the time to sell Corey Davis or to buy Corey Davis? Or are you waiting until maybe after a disappointing season to maybe try to buy on a little bit of a dip going into next year with a new quarterback?
With the entire Mariota crew on my back, y'all disrespectful. I'm gonna say that first off. So John Hogue, I got you. Outhouse, I'm holding you down. I got us. That said, Eitan, if you're talking about A.J. Brown right at this current moment, I'd actually be more excited for Adam Humphries out the gate, and definitely for Corey Davis. I love Corey Davis's prospects. The problem is if you're talking about this week, the defense for the Browns could be really scary this season, particularly with Olivier Vernon coming off one edge, with Myles Garrett coming off the other. That's scary. That's a good group. So if for whatever reason the offensive line is not up to the task, I'm not super excited for any of those guys except for the ones who I think might be ultra targeted, which may be either somewhere between Davis, Humphries, or Delaney Walker. I don't see A.J. Brown being someone who's going to be hyper targeted out the gate.
It's hard to get excited about any of them, only because the offense really isn't that bad. I mean, regardless how you feel about the quarterback, the guys that are throwing to, you got Corey Davis and A.J. Brown. Adam Humphries, I can't get too excited because Delaney Walker is healthy, and if everyone just forgets when he's healthy, he's top 5. He just is. He's really good. If he were to go down, I'd love Adam Humphries, and if Adam Humphries would go down, Delaney Walker, but more likely Delaney Walker will end up going down at some point. No, sorry, but yeah, I just have to see what Mariota is going to be doing with these guys in the regular season. I think the targets would be spread too much for me to trust anyone, especially in week 1 against that defense, like you were saying, against the Browns.
All right, guys, let's move on to the next game on the slate. Bills-Jets. 2 really, really exciting offenses here. Josh Allen versus Sam Darnold. 2 of those second-year sunshine QBs that we hope will kind of take over and be one of those breakouts going into next season. How does this game fill out? Who should you be betting on here, Sam?
I'm good.
You don't want to start anybody?
Nah, I'm good.
Bro, I don't know. And I know you looked this up a minute ago, but I'm pretty sure their over-under's a pretty high number.
It's where are we at here? It's off the slate. They just canceled the game. It's fine.
Oh.
It's over. Nobody wants to see that garbage.
Speaking of Adam Humphries, we were talking about guys like that earlier. I don't know.
No, it's not. It's 41. Sorry, it's 41. It's not.
I wouldn't be interested in starting him this week, but just in general, some guy to keep a tabs on. People don't pay attention to the Bills much, but Cole Beasley and Josh Allen. Josh Allen is not accurate, but he loves to launch the ball, which is why people love him and John Brown together. That's but it's going to be inconsistent up and down. But he's had a really good rapport with Cole Beasley. Apparently his accuracy is honed in at 10 yards, and he can nail Cole Beasley all day. So at least in PPR, He's very possibly on your waivers or something. Just keep an eye on how Allen works with Beasley in week 1 if you don't already own him, or take a flyer, because I think that there's a chance on a team where you're not really sure how consistent Josh Allen will be, and they'll try to be running the ball a bunch, that I think Beasley could get a really, really large amount of targets this year.
What do we think about Devin Singletary?
It's not my turn. I'm sorry. I know it's not my turn. I'm really excited for this game, because I'm really excited for both of the quarterbacks to really show the improvement that we've hoped for, and I'm excited to see. Listen, Stompy. Remember. I've loved Lamar Jackson since he was at Louisville. I'm a UK fan.
This is not about Lamar Jackson.
I know, but I say something nice about Josh Allen, and you get upset. I'm just saying. I just want to see the improvement, because just like Matt said, with one of the things I was watching in the preseason is how are they distributing the ball, and Cole Beasley was getting peppered with targets, and so he was willing to throw the ball with a closer A dot. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I was saying. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Josh Allen's trash. Won't last 2 years in this league. 3 years in this league.
Hey, quick question with those two, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. This is not meant to upset anyone, I swear to God. No, remember at the end of last year, Josh Allen ended last 4 weeks, 5 weeks? What was it? As QB1, was it 4 weeks?
It could be, yes.
Whatever. And then at the very end, people are like, oh my God, how high is he going to be? And some people are like, oh, I'm going to take him in the top 12. And Lamar Jackson, everyone hated.
Mm-hmm.
And now the expected ADP from the end of the season just completely flipped, where Lamar Jackson is being taken where people thought Allen was. And we really haven't seen a whole lot what really happened there, other than the people that I know the reasons why you like Lamar Jackson. I know the people, the pros and cons, but without seeing an actual NFL game, other than just a few highlight clips, what really happened to switch the ADP that much from the last time we saw them play an actual football game?
I happened.
You single-handedly changed the minds of the entire nation.
I think we react. I mean, fantasy football players, it's a reaction where it's like, well, I mean, Josh Allen obviously can be that top guy, but then when you actually dive into and I know I said it tongue in cheek, but when you get people like people like me, people like JJ, people like Elliot Chris saying things like he can be top 10, top 5, and you actually dive into the numbers and realize that Josh Allen was not a good passer last season. And Josh Allen is not a runner like Lamar Jackson is. And Lamar Jackson actually was not that bad throwing the ball last season. And then you also look at, well, now he's got I just forgot his name. Greg Roman, he's got
week. Just like Eitan was saying, for this week, Stompy says, don't play Josh Allen. We get it, Stompy. We got it.
Don't ever play Josh Allen.
It's just, it's funny. People were that high. People got naturally higher on Lamar Jackson. It's just people are like, oh, well, Josh Allen, if maybe he can get a few more consistent guys to throw to. They give him possibly the perfect wide receiver for him in John Brown, just for whatever he's capable of, and you give him Cole Beasley. It's like they've tried to help him, and his ADP only keeps going down.
They've given him the same targets that Lamar Jackson has. When you look at Marquise Brown, when you look at Willie Snead, it's the same types of targets for the same type of quarterback. Now, I think Lamar Jackson obviously is doing this because the play is scheduled to do this when it comes to running, and I think that's the distinction between the two of them. Whereas Josh Allen is just running for his life behind that line. But I do think that they're very similar talents in terms of what they can do throwing the football so far this season. I will say I am going to be starting Bills, if anything, in this game, just because I don't think that the Jets defense can hold candles to the Bills defense right now. But let's move on. Let's go to the next game. Next game is the Baltimore Lamar Jacksons versus the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, we're going to hear a little bit of a tirade about starting Lamar Jackson in this game. I won't head it off too much. But outside of Lamar Jackson, who else will be starting here?
Well, listen, I shouldn't have to tell you to do that.
I'm interested to see in week 1 what the heck they mean by him throwing more. I'd like to see what that actually means. He's going to throw more. What does that mean? Does that mean good things for Mark Ingram? Does that just, what the heck does that mean?
It means he's going to throw the ball more, Matt.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I meant actual What is math? Like how much more? Like more? Like I'm going to throw 2 more? Or is he going to throw 10 more? What is he going to do?
I'm here for the 10 targets out the gate for Devontae Parker in his campaign to show that he's superior to
out of here.
That's what I'm here for. That's all. Anyway.
Bert alert, baby. I think you said the wrong number. Or wrong name. It's 10 targets to Albert Wilson.
I don't think it's 10 targets to anybody. I think that it's going to be tough for either of those Miami Dolphins. For anybody on the Miami Dolphins offense this game, it's going to be really, really tough. They're not going to have much of the ball because of the type of offense that the Baltimore Ravens do want to run. They're going to be playing a ball control offense for the majority of the game. And then this isn't a very good offense when it actually does get the ball. So I can foresee a lot of 3-and-outs and then long, long times until they get the ball back. So this might be one of those games where you want to roll out whatever Ravens you have just because you think they'll be on top most of the game. And outside of that, you really do want to stay away from it. But let's now go to another really, really exciting offense here, the Washington Redskins versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Is there anybody to start in Washington in this game outside of maybe Terry McLaurin? See one of those guys?
Depends on how deep your league is. I mean, Chris Thompson's interesting at all times when they're going to be behind. But I don't know what what your league has to look like. But he's a guy that if healthy, people forget how really solid he could be with Case Keenum there without us seeing Trey Quinn and Jordan Reed. I guess I'm going to assume he's just not going to be ready. I hope he is, but I think whatever. I mean, you probably have someone more exciting to start, but they are going to be very behind. But I get the feeling that the Philly could just bury them, and it could just be embarrassing to all the players.
Sam, is there anyone in the Eagles secondary that scares you?
Avonte Maddox, I think, a little bit. Okay. Malcolm Jenkins is still there, but he's more of a safety. So
he's a box safety.
Yeah. So I wouldn't. I think Avonte Maddox is probably their best corner at this point.
That's not saying much.
Yeah, and he was.
Yeah, he was good.
He played pretty well last year in duty when everybody was going down hurt, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. So I'm just saying it's not far-fetched to say that if you think that the Eagles are going to do work in this game, then it's not far-fetched to say, hey, go ahead and start any of your outside receivers or any of your receivers for Washington and see what sticks. If you need like the flex spot, if you're struggling with starting someone there, I think it's worth the shot.
I mean, an interesting one here is Vernon Davis because he always seems to fill in here. And if you really want somebody that knows this offense, because I mean, yeah, you do have Terry McLaurin. I mean, you have Paul Richardson, but then you have Vernon Davis, who has been in Washington for years, and he's always stepped up when Jordan Reed's injured. And I don't know if they have the safeties or the linebackers to be able to cover somebody with Jordan Davis or with Vernon Davis at speed. So that's an interesting one. If you are streaming tight end, maybe think about Vernon Davis this week.
Just please start Haskins soon.
Yes.
Please. Somebody start Haskins soon. It's just
him and Jones. Wheels up for McLaurin, right? When that happens.
Yeah, for McLaurin or for Trey Quinn, one of them. It's going to be a slot receiver that is going to be the receiver to own in Washington. I just, I see that a lot of people do think that he has a connection with McLaurin. I just think McLaurin's going to be miscast into an outside role in his first season because of the presence of guys like Jordan Reed and like Trey Quinn in that offense. I think they're going to take most of the slot duties, and McLaurin will kind of be playing out of position on the outside. But I hope that he gets a chance this season. I do think that he can be a decent player. Rams-Panthers. The Rams are one of the worst defenses when it comes to the middle of the field. At least they were last season. DJ Moore is the guy that a lot of people are kind of not necessarily paying as much attention to right now just because of all the buzz that Curtis Samuel is getting this offseason. I just don't know if this Carolina Panthers offense can morph into their opponent this week, the Los Angeles Rams. And I think that in order to return value on Curtis Samuel, on DJ Moore, and on their real wide receiver one, Christian McCaffrey, that they're going to have to be Rams-esque. I just don't see if that happens. I don't see if that happens in this game. I do think it can be a shootout, so I do think that there's value to be had everywhere. But the guy that I want to start in this game, if I'm starting a guy in this game is going to be DJ Moore. I think he's the one to start.
I'd be very happy starting Greg Olsen. If you're one of those people that punted tight ends and took a guy towards the end, he's healthy for now. Like you said, they don't defend the middle of the field well. And when he's on the field, there's no doubting that Cam Newton's favorite target. I mean, obviously, Christian McCaffrey is the offense, but he loves throwing to Greg Olsen. So, if you took a guy towards the tail end of the tight ends, I'd definitely be happy to start Greg Olsen in this one.
I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I mean, over under is 49.5. The Rams are as good as ever. I mean, yes, they do have some offensive line stuff going on, but that offense is back and healthy. We'll see what Cooper Kupp looks like. We'll see how the Rams deploy Cooper Kupp. But I mean, I think they're going to be top 3, top 5 scoring offense again this season, and I think the Panthers are going to have to throw to keep up. So honestly, I mean, as we're talking, Greg Olsen's foot just fell off, but I would not be surprised to see all of the pass catchers flex worthy this week for the Panthers.
Yeah, it's going to be a high scoring game.
Except for Chris Hogan.
In this game, I have a quick sit. At least, I want you to think about this. In the event that you're in a single QB league, which if you are, I'm sorry for your loss. But in single QB leagues, I would be wary of playing Cam in this game. The point total's nice, and I like the point total. I even like the matchup. With him already being hurt and with that offensive line being shaky for Carolina, and what we've seen Aaron Donald and that defensive line do work, if for whatever reason they get to him and they re-aggravate Cam, that could be really disappointing to start your week out with Cam leaving the game early, or him just being ineffective because the pass rush is something that is just overwhelms that offensive line. So if you have an option that might be viable at all aside from Cam, I would consider benching Cam for this week till he proves that he's okay from the foot. I don't want to deal with the Rams defense. That's scary business.
That sounds more like a threat than a warning. Like you have a voodoo doll and you're like, just warning you, don't start Cam.
Stabbing him in the foot.
Left foot.
Real quick, because I feel like I've had this conversation with everyone. You just give like a one-word answer. Who does everyone think the wide receiver 1 at the end of the year is on the Rams? Who's the wide receiver 1? Fantasy.
Woods.
Yeah.
It's Kupp, Woods, Cooks, all of them. They're all wide receiver ones essentially to me. I just think that they do different things. Brandon Cooks obviously is the deep threat. Cooper Kupp is going to be the guy that gets the touchdown.
Stop it. Just answer the question.
One-word answer. I love them all.
Who is number 1 in fantasy football points?
I mean,
it's my show. I'm breaking all the rules.
I have to go with Cooper Kupp, but you guys know that already. Right. I feel like that was specifically for me. But we'll move on. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Giants. Or it's the other way around. It's the Giants at the Cowboys. We're going to have not Daniel Jones, again, for some stupid reason. We're going to have Eli Manning starting on the road against Dallas. We're going to have Dak Prescott. Ezekiel Elliott is obviously going to be back. We would hope that Amari Cooper is effective in this game. I think Evan Ingram is going to smash in every game that he plays this year because he is the only wide receiver of note out in New York, at least until Golden Tate comes back. And then when Golden Tate comes back, then him and Sterling Shepard are going to have to battle for the same types of targets. So I really do think that this is a start Evan Ingram game and a start all of your Cowboys game. Do you guys have any disagreements with that?
Here.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I don't love starting any of the Giants except for Saquon. So,
I mean, it's such an obvious thing to start with the Cowboys. So I will differentiate by saying, again, DFS, sit. Do not play Ezekiel Elliott. It's obvious he's going to be a pitch count. They said as much. He's the highest price player on the board. Definitely sit him. just, as a random example. And I think Michael Gallup is a fantastic value as someone who Amari Cooper could be taking it easy. Ezekiel could be taking it easy because they're probably going to stomp the Giants. So why risk it? But Gallup will be out there doing his thing probably the entire game. So I love him. So if you need a different way to differentiate, obviously in season long, you're just starting them all with a big smile on your face.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know. I mean, I get that you're trying to be a little bit different here, so I'm not going to trash this too much, but I don't necessarily know if Ezekiel Elliott is not going to be the focal point of this game. I think they're going to be up early, and because of that, they're just going to run the rest of the game. And I really don't think that they have any faith in Mike Weber because they didn't really give him that much work when Elliott was out of the picture. So
practice squad.
Yeah, so I think that this is going to be Zeke entirely this game. I don't even think that we're going to see Tony Pollard mix in all that much.
But even if you don't think if they are up big, that they wouldn't give Tony Pollard carries?
They just gave Zeke 4 years, $50 million.
No, I understand that. That's not
all of the work to Zeke Elliott.
Not on the week one.
In a game they're destroying him, and he didn't have a spring and he didn't have a training camp. I think that if they're up big, like we assume, they're going to try to give him a break with a guy that they were prepared to let have the run of the game anyway.
They're already doing things that don't make sense in Dallas with paying Zeke in the first place. So if they're already on that train, then I think that it's not going to stop at. I'm
not telling anyone to sit. I'm just saying for $9,100 in DFS, there's better values out there, like Nick Chubb for $3,000 less.
I do hear you, Sterling Shepard. Do we have any thoughts on him? I've had my mind changed a little bit this offseason. I do think that there might be some value in Sterling Shepard. Do you guys think that there's a little bit of value to be mined there?
Volume, baby.
No question. No question.
Tate out. Yeah. It's the Ingram and Shepard show.
It may not be good volume, but it's volume.
All right, guys, 4 at a time. Colts, Chargers, Bengals, Seahawks. Tyler Lockett. Obviously, Tyler Boyd, also obviously. I think that you want to start all of the Colts tight ends against the Chargers, against the Derwin James less Chargers. I also think that you want to start all of the players that play for the Chargers against the Colts. Do you guys think that these slates are going to go a little bit differently?
I mean, obviously start Chris Carson because the Bengals were atrocious last year against the run. They didn't get anybody at linebacker, so they're going to the Seahawks are going to run all over the Bengals. With the Colts, I mean, you're not going to sit T.Y. Hilton, but I'm wary of the Colts until I see Jacoby Brissett in his second season. I think Nyheim Hines is a sneaky play because I think he could get some targets. With the Chargers, you're starting all of the guys that you normally would: Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. And then, with the Bengals, beyond Boyd and Mixon, that's probably who I'm starting there.
I think you named every player you can possibly mention, to be honest.
That's fine.
Anyone worth talking about, I think you kind of nailed.
Chris Carson, seriously. I would not be surprised to see him as RB1 this week.
Who's the wide receiver in Seattle?
DK.
I think they said Metcalf's playing, right? So
Otherwise
it was going to be Malik Turner, which I was kind of excited to see what he was about. But in Seattle with your point, Stompy, about the running game, would you guys consider Rashad Penny a viable flex play? Yeah. Okay. And with that said, also in the Indianapolis game, I'm curious to see if Indianapolis' defense is going to take a step forward. Obviously, Darius Leonard being an All-Pro as a rookie was crazy, but I'm curious if Hooker and the rest of those guys can take a step forward, because that could be a really interesting team out of the AFC South.
That secondary was surprisingly good last season. Pierre Desir, right. Kenny, was it Kenny Young? No, Kenny Young is in Baltimore. Regardless, the secondary was really good, and they just added Justin Houston across from Jamal Sheard.
So be careful starting your guys other than Keenan Allen is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and that's a valid point. I mean, this defense took a surprising step forward last season, and they added some people this season that could they could end up being a very good defense again this season.
Well, there's one name we didn't bring up, which is probably the most interesting from anyone actually wanting to hear start-sit advice, because everyone we mentioned, probably everyone was going to start anyway. Chris Carson or Rashad Penny was the interesting name, one of them, but the other one's Marlon Mack. What do you do if you have Marlon Mack in this game? I mean, obviously it depends on who your other options are, but let's just say you have a completely reasonable backup option. Whatever, Devin Singletary or something along that nature, or whatever. You have someone usable.
Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, Colts likely in a negative game script because the Chargers are a good team. Jacoby Brissett's probably going to have a little bit of growing pains, at least early in the season. I don't necessarily know if I'm putting too much in the hands of Marlon Mack, at least early in the season, until I know how that Colts offense without Andrew Luck is going to operate.
Yeah, but I mean, the Chargers weren't good against the run last season either. Like they just don't have the guys in the middle to stop the run. And we've heard that Marlon Mack is going to take more of a 3-down role this season. So, I mean, I'm not as a flex. I'm perfectly fine starting Marlon Mack as a flex. As your RB2, that's where it kind of gets a little iffy for me.
I think most teams probably are pot committed to starting him because where most people have taken him, because most people drafted before Luck, but I mean, most people probably don't have another choice but to do it. But it's interesting for the people that are on the fence.
Marlon Mack, Darius Geis this week.
I think you got to go Mack. Geis will be in a little bit of.
You want to talk about negative game script? Geis is probably going to be in a horrendous game script, and he's got Chris Thompson.
And he's splitting early down work with Peterson still in the early season. So.
Well, I mean, all reports are that the running game is going to flow through him, and that AP is not necessarily going to see work until Geis needs a break. So that's kind of the perspective of where I was going with that.
That you talk about really good interior defenses, Aton. The 3 defensive tackles that the Eagles can trot out. Oh my gosh! Between Fletcher Cox and I'm missing the other 2 who are just studly, but it's going to be gross.
If the game's already in doubt early, I don't think they want to be running Geis into that wall for no reason. Maybe they might sacrifice Peterson to the gods in this one.
That is true. We're going to do this last game just as a one, and then we will do our last one of the slate. We'll actually tie in 3 games together, but I want to get a little bit more in depth here because a lot of people like this team. Arizona Cardinals obviously are going up against the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions are going to Sun Devil Stadium. Detroit Lions, everybody loves Kenny Golladay. Everybody thinks that Marvin Jones can come back and have a decent year. I don't necessarily know if people are kind of on the bounce back Matthew Stafford train just because apparently he was playing with a broken back last season. Kerryon Johnson, whether or not he's going to be used in the passing game as much as we would want him to is a question. The big question for me is with the Arizona Cardinals. I just think that there's a lot of slot guys. I think there's a lot of people to kind of crowd out the targets for David Johnson. I know that they're bringing back 3 starters on that offensive line. That was one of the worst offensive lines in football last season. The Detroit Lions have this guy named Snacks Harrison. You might know him. He is a very, very good run defender. If David Johnson is going to get fantasy points in this game, it's got to be through the air. Do we think this is something that the Cardinals can do consistently, or do you think that maybe a guy like David Johnson at the 5 spot in drafts is going a little bit too high? Would you rather have Le'Veon Bell? Would you rather have James Conner?
No.
Yeah, no. That's right. I'm here for the Arizona hype train. Had the fortunate blessing to be able to join Matt Williams on the Daily Blitz pod. At Daily Blitz, and I'm wheels up for Arizona because I'm excited about what the ceiling could be. I'm not really even gonna wait to see what could happen. I'm just trotting out my Cardinals immediately because I think that it could be a lot of fun, and they're home for this one. I think it'll be fun for them to get going there. Also, those other two defensive tackles in Philadelphia, Timmy Jernigan and Malik Jackson, along with Fletcher Cox, is stupid. Stupid.
That's like the rotation that they had when they won the Super Bowl, really. God, with the Cardinals, I think that this is another high scoring game. I mean, the Cardinals defense, not good against the run, they were very good against the pass, but now they lost their two best cornerbacks, and Patrick Peterson being lost for 6 games to PEDs or PED suspension. The other cornerback, and now I just forgot his name, but broke his leg. So they're starting a journeyman and a rookie. So they're going to be very vulnerable to the pass, and that's why I like Marvin Jones. Obviously Kenny Golladay. This could end up being a high scoring game. We don't know necessarily what that air raid looks like because they have not deployed it yet fully, and that could end up the Lions. There you go. Michael got me. Robert Alford broke his leg. But the Lions struggled last season against the pass. I believe they were ranked bottom 3 in the league against all wide receivers in DVOA. So that could end up being where Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, and David Johnson all get good work. So just watch for that. But I really like Fitzgerald this week, just because if anybody's going to be kind of an outlet, it will be Larry Fitzgerald. And then Christian Kirk could be a good start this week as well, because like I said, I just think this is going to be a high scoring game.
Yeah, I agree. Start everybody, both wide receivers on both teams, both running backs on both teams, both quarterbacks on both teams. Just don't start the tight ends. Everyone else is good to go.
Steelers, Patriots, Broncos, Raiders, Texans, Saints. I think the Texans Saints is going to be a huge game, high-scoring game from a lot of different people. We already talked about the Texans a little bit, so we'll paper over that just a bit. But let's talk about Steelers, Patriots, and the Broncos, Raiders, and then say what you want to say about Alvin Kamara. Stompy, I'll give you the floor.
He's the best. Patriots, Steelers. They're the slate. The games this week, there are actually a decent amount of games that could be high scoring. It's the Steelers and the Patriots. It's two fantastic offenses. You got it. You're obviously starting Michelle, Connor, Juju. Gordon that's the one that's up in the air for me. You're starting Edelman very obviously. Probably starting you are starting Vance McDonald. Do you start James Washington is another question. So it's those secondary wide receivers. Do you feel you should be starting them in Josh Gordon and James Washington? Dante Moncrief is nothing to me.
Dante Moncrief is the number 2 receiver in Pittsburgh.
I don't care.
And in week 3 of the preseason, he was getting all the snaps. So you may not like it, but I'm sitting. I'll just say this: I'm sitting any other pass catcher in Pittsburgh not named Juju.
Yes, absolutely. The New England defense is so underrated. The corners, the cover corners will smother you to death. Juju can obviously overcome what he's got to deal with. But James Washington dealing with JC Jackson, Dante Moncrief probably dealing with Gilmore, I assume, with McCourty on Juju. No thank you to anyone besides Juju in the pass catchers.
That would be the accepted thought. But Juju actually has not played most of his snaps, at least in the preseason, in the slot so far. He's been on the outside. He's been an outside receiver. His slot percentage was something in the range of about 65% last season. It was about 15% in just the small sample size that we've had in the preseason. Devin McCourty is obviously the safety. So he might get a lot more of Gilmore than we might originally anticipate. Is that putting anybody potentially off of maybe starting Juju, or maybe making any of the other pass catchers a little bit more relevant for that matter?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know Belichick's propensity of what he typically does. If he's putting the main guy on the main receiver, or if he's putting the second corner on the main receiver with help, and then letting Gilmore get number 2. It does. Now that you mentioned that does make me nervous for Juju. But I'm starting Juju at this point.
Belichick's calling card is typically trying to take your best player away from you. That's what he tries to do. I don't see. I mean, again, whatever. I'm sorry, DFS minded. That's an easy reason to fade him in DFS. But in season long, I just don't see how you could ever talk yourself into sitting Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, you may be disappointed, but a disappointing game from him could still turn into a better game than most average wide receivers.
Yeah, a disappointing Juju game is a high end wide receiver 3 game.
Yeah,
and I think you can live through that kind of any way that it goes. Last game, guys, Broncos Raiders. We have not seen Josh Jacobs at all on Hard Knocks. In fact, he didn't even want to see the camera. The last Hard Knocks episode, he hid his face from the camera completely. Are we going to see him in this game against the Denver Broncos? Are we going to see AB finally get over his helmet issues and be the AB of old? Can Derek Carr play football? These are all questions that we have this year and in this game. So what do we think is going to happen between the Denver Broncos going into the black hole that is the Oakland Raiders?
Good for him, by the way.
Tonight
good for him.
Yeah, tonight on WCPO, can Derek Carr play football? I'm not thrilled about this game, and I'm not thrilled about really playing anyone in this game, if I'm honest.
Full homer take. The Broncos are going to be a top 5 defense this season.
Hey, what up, Fangio?
I think they might be a bottom 5 offense, though. That's my worry.
I disagree with that.
No, yeah, I disagree with that too.
But they last season, I think the Broncos had the false narrative that they were bad against the run. They had a 3-game stretch where they gave up, I think it was 500 and some odd yards to 3 different guys, including back-to-back 200-yard games. Beyond that, they were actually I think they were 11th in terms of giving up fantasy points to running backs. They just had that rough stretch. And one of them was Todd Gurley and the other was Kareem Hunt, by the way. And then there was Isaiah Crowell sandwich in there. But with Vic Fangio, with an upgrade at linebacker, with Shelby Harris in the middle there, I think this defense is going to be, and I said this unfortunately Matt cut it out or wasn't recording when I lost my mind with Aton and John Hogue, but
that was so good.
It was so, but this defense I think can rival, and I'm not saying that they will be, but they can rival the 2015 defense.
Yeah, it's going to be a scary defense. I can definitely see that.
Right.
I have serious concerns about what happens with this offense, though, because, I mean, even if this offense is good, Emmanuel Sanders you have there, you have Deshaun Hamilton there, you have Noah Fant there, you have Cortland Sutton. I mean, like, for fantasy purposes, who are you starting? And then all these guys are tied to the magnificent, the everlasting, the elite of the elite quarterback in the NFL, Joe Flacco. So, like, what happens here with all these different guys? Where's the value in this offense?
No Fant, Emmanuel Sanders, and the 2 running backs.
I was gonna say gut call. I think Emmanuel Sanders actually is the star of this game.
I think it's no Fant. The Raiders struggled last season to cover the tight end. Didn't really improve that linebacker core. They actually got older somehow.
It's kind of actually same. I mean, I kind of agree with it. I mean, I'm kind of putting Sanders in that same area of the field. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's no Fant. I think no Fant's a start for tight ends this week.
All right, guys. Any last points before we move off of the slate and get into this week's Dynasty Diagnostic?
Nope.
All right. So let's now get jiggy with it. Let's get into what we always get into on the Dynasty Diagnostic show. It is the Dynasty Diagnostic. This week's diagnostic was submitted by Matt Collins. You can find him on Twitter at MJC81789. Please be sure to give him a follow. And if you want to be part of next week's show, all you have to do is follow the podcast at Dino Diagnostic on Twitter. Smash that subscribe button and leave us a review at the link in the description on iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. So let's get into this roster. It is a 10-team Superflex PPR. Start 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 Superflex, and 1 flex spot. Quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, Marcus Mariota, and Josh Rosen. I don't understand how you managed to get a quarterback that was worse than Marcus Mariota on this roster after having Marcus Mariota, but you did it. You surprised us all. You got Josh Rosen too.
You did it.
What are we supposed to do with this quarterback room?
So this reminds me of, do you know in Step Brothers when they talk about getting a divorce and Dale goes, I think I'm gonna throw up. That's what this quarterback room reminds me of, because you know what, J. Mike, Mariota's not a good quarterback. John Hogue, Dynasty Outhouse, Travis May, even Mariota is not a good quarterback. I don't care what you tell me, he's not a good quarterback. He is very susceptible to lose his job this season. I'm not saying Tannehill's a good quarterback either, but it's like, okay, well, what's two times 1%? Well, it's 2%. So Tannehill's the 2% quarterback. Mariota's the 1% quarterback. I like that analogy. That was a good analogy. I just made it up on the spot. Josh Rosen. I actually think Josh Rosen's a good quarterback. He's just gotten shafted in the first 2 seasons.
That was mean. That was mean. He's not a terrible quarterback. He's Eli Manning. And you have to put Eli Manning behind a good offensive line.
So, and unfortunately, he goes from one bad offensive line to another bad offensive line. So hopefully he finds a third team that will give him a chance. But yeah, this is rough. You need Mariota as a third quarterback, fine. If this was Watson, some other quarterback, Mariota and Rosen, I would be fine with this room, but it's not. So you need a second quarterback that you can rely on week in and week out. And looking at your picks, you probably should be trading those picks for that.
So without giving the bag completely away here, is there a quarterback that you have in mind that you might be able to snag that maybe is a little bit undervalued right now that you think would be good with the quartet of Watson, Mariota, and Rosen around him?
Stafford.
Yeah, that was my first thought.
That was the name, yeah.
By the way, the biggest beneficiary of that trade between Miami and Houston was this guy's quarterback room. Tunsil coming over to save Watson was like the biggest move. Maybe that's why he has them both. He has some kind of inside thing going with Rosen and Watson. They made a trade.
Another one, Kirk Cousins, I think, is going undervalued right now. He may not be like part of the elite squad, but 25 plus touchdowns, 4,000 plus yards. I mean, I'd be comfortable with him as my QB1 if you wait on QB, but as a QB2, I'd love that.
What's disappointing about this room is the fact that this is a 10-team league.
Yeah, right.
And right. So regardless of how you feel about Mariota, like best case scenario next year, you have Watson, who's probably a top 2 to 3 option leading the way, and you have three starting quarterbacks. Worst case scenario, Watson gets hurt again, and the next year he's the only starter that you have on your team. That's what's scary if Mariota and then Rosen still aren't starting next year for their teams. So that could get real bad real fast.
This guy may also want to consider going after Haskins or Daniel Jones on the cheap. That might be something he tries to do as well.
Can you get Daniel Jones on the cheap anymore in a Superflex league? Is that possible?
Not if James the Brain is in the league.
Yeah, what's the cheap? Right now, he's probably worth a 2021st.
But if you had him in a Superflex league, are you selling for a 2021st right now?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that.
I don't know, dog. I don't know.
I personally am.
I think at worst you get even value, and at best you get much better value. So I'm okay with it.
I think there's a chance he could be good.
I really do like class, though. I love the class.
I wish James hadn't left the chat so he could start just coming after us.
What do you guys think about the idea of just, getting backups and hoping for the best, getting Ryan Finley, getting Nick Mullins, getting Chad Kelly, and hoping that one of those guys, by the time Marcus Mariota implodes and loses his job, gets the job back and is another starter for you? Do you think that's a viable strategy?
How deep is the bench? I mean, you might be better off just not even starting a second quarterback rather than hoarding crappy ones. You know what I mean?
I mean, I get it if it's like I would not be banking on that next. Like if it was a rebuild, sure, fine, whatever. But I would not be banking on that going into next year. Like I need a legitimate QB2 here.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Though I do think Nick Mullins takes over for Jimmy G sooner rather than later.
Jimmy G's contract, guys. I'm gonna say it every episode until people actually start like sending me the spot track link, and then maybe I'll think about starting it. But until that happens, Jimmy G is not long for the Bay Area. I'm telling you right now.
I missed that small area where Brian Hoyer was paid more than Brissett, so people could have freaked out about that a little more. They gave Brissett that extension too fast. We didn't get to marinate on that chaos at all.
Absolutely. Some men want to watch the world burn. Matt Williams is one of them. Running backs: Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, David Montgomery, who I've been told is not better than Devin Singletary. I'm going to be on that this day. I don't know what I'm going to do. Jamal Williams, Chase Edmonds, Malcolm Brown, Mike Boone, preseason darling Mike Boone, 2 years in a row now. Dexter Williams and Demarie Crockett. So Aaron Jones, Henry, Ingram, and Demo. Is that a good running back core? Is that a good enough running back core for you?
It's deep enough. Like, you have effectively 4 possible RB2s. And then like Henry and Ingram and Aaron Jones. And so you have 3 possible RB1s, 4 possible RB2s, and I'm fine with that. Monty, I don't think this year will be a top 24, but next year I think because of that Mike Davis contract, I think can step into that role. So I'm fine with it.
Tariq Cohen is in his contract year too.
There you go.
What do you think?
I'm so on the room.
I like the Aaron Jones. At least they have him covered. I mean, Jamal Williams is garbage, but Dexter's on the team. It's unfortunate that there's nowhere near enough depth to upgrade quarterback at all. You got to hang on to every single person you have. So it's fine. You're going to get by. You need everyone to be healthy, for sure.
Shout out to Chase Edmonds there at the end of the bench there. I like that a lot.
Yeah, he could definitely be something special. For me, this is a perfect running back room because it doesn't look like you had to spend too much on any one person in this running back group. Probably got Demo for the highest spend, the first round pick. Everybody else you probably got in the second round or later. I mean, you probably spent a first on Henry, but it was so long ago that nobody cares anymore. You didn't draft Mark Ingram. I can't imagine this is a Dynasty League that's been going on for like 7, 8, 9 years. But yeah, for me, just like Sam was saying, you've got 4 definite RB2s for me, and then 3 potential RB1s. I think you could have probably 2 of the 3 between Jones, Henry, and Ingram are going to be RB1s this season. I do think Montgomery isn't necessarily going to get the workload that a lot of people do think that he'll get, but I think having Chase Edmonds, having Malcolm Brown on the back of this roster gives you that added flexibility in the event that, worst case scenario happens, DJ goes down, or what we all are scared of with Todd Gurley comes to pass and he isn't the same back this season or he's hurt early on. I think Malcolm Brown can have a role. So I think this is a good running back group. Good job there. Let's move on to wide receivers. At the receiver spot, we have Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Larry Fitzgerald, Preston Williams, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Paris Campbell, McCall Hardman, Deontay Johnson, and Corey Davis.
So the 2 oldest people in the NFL and a bunch of rookies.
Pretty much.
Eitan, you still so disrespectful, man. And Corey Davis. No, bro.
Like I tried with this group, Eitan. I tried to put them as deep as possible. God, this is the furthest I can go.
This wide receiver room though has every stage of the NFL life though. From Fitz, at the very end, AB, who's probably at the end of his peak, Godwin, who's probably walking into his peak, Corey Davis, who's getting ready to be the GOAT. And then a bunch of I'll try to slide that in. Then just 5 rookies, right? Again, highly touted, undrafted, and then irrelevant in Deontay Johnson, at least for this season. So I like the diversity in the room, at least, if nothing else.
I mean, if I would feel better if I had actually, like I don't hate it.
I hate it. So
I don't, because I mean, let's be real. AB, despite his craziness, and I mean, you could be scared of that craziness and him not playing, but he is still a wide receiver 1 when he's on the field.
Is he?
Yes.
Is he with Derek Carr?
Yes.
Is he really?
the volume, 140 targets will make him a wide receiver 1. Godwin will be a wide receiver 2 this season. Fitz continues to produce. He still had like 700 and some odd yards and 6 touchdowns last season, despite how horrendous that offense was. And just previous to that, he had over 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. The guy just produces, and I think he's going to produce again this season. Whether that be wide receiver 3 or 4 numbers, I don't know. But you're not really relying on Fitz to be like a stalwart in your team.
He's got to be your wide receiver 3 here, though. That's the thing. Fitz or Corey Davis is.
I think he's fine as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I mean, Corey Davis. Was he a wide receiver?
Got to be last. He was not. He was a wide receiver.
I like
he was frozen and
with a top 5 market share last season. He was still a wide receiver 3.
We missed a lot of that rant.
You were stuck like this for a while.
You were frozen.
No, I was just saying that with one of the top 5, top 10 at the very least market shares in the league, Corey Davis was still a wide receiver 3. I believe he was something like wide receiver 28, like a high-end wide receiver 3, but still a wide receiver 3.
Can you name the rookies again? I kind of forget. I heard Hardman and J-Jaw. Who else they got?
Preston Williams, Paris Campbell, Deontay Johnson.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I would be okay if you were stronger at running back here and QB. But you're not, and I think you need a second, like a legitimate wide receiver 2 here to make me more comfortable with this room.
Yeah, see, for me, this is one of those cases where you can play the running backs and wide receivers off each other when you're building rosters. If you have a really strong group at one of those 2 spots, you can afford to be a little bit weaker somewhere else. But as currently constructed, as it stands, we were just talking about liking your running back group for what it is, but not being able to move any of those pieces because you don't have that extra value in that running back group. At wide receivers, I think we're kind of in the same boat here. Like, not only are you going to need one of Fitz or Corey Davis to be your wide receiver 3, at least this year, we don't necessarily know what these rookies are going to become. So we don't necessarily know what this even looks like next year. But as it stands, the only way this can go is kind of down for me. We have Larry Fitzgerald. He's not going to increase in value. The rest of your wide receivers are not going to increase in value outside of Chris Godwin. So for me, this is really a situation where, I mean, I can see that maybe you did the right thing by trying to draft a lot of receivers on this team. I think you would have been better served using those picks to go out and get quality young wide receivers on this team to go ahead and potentially start for you. So that's my worry with this wide receiver group. But if you had a stronger running back group, I could somehow be okay with this. But I'm not currently. We're going to talk about George Kittle. He's the tight end on this team. His name's George Kittle. He's pretty good.
Thank God.
He is one of the best tight ends in the league. He's 25 years old. I think he has 2 more seasons left on his contract. Jimmy Garoppolo dates porn stars. That's not relevant to this conversation, but I just thought I should throw something fun in. Let's talk about
real nice, Clark. Real nice.
That is the name of this episode.
What's with the National Lampoon random thing, J. Mike? What was that? I love that. You need to have a hat of random facts where you just pull one out and just read it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But yeah, in the context of this roster, are you George Kittling? Can you afford to George Kittle? Or is this a situation where you have to break that up into pieces?
No, this team is like paycheck to paycheck, like just getting by everywhere. And if you are living paycheck to paycheck, you cannot live above your means. And George Kittle is living above your means. You need to put him on put him on eBay and get some extra money. Put him on the Facebook, let it go. What is it called? Let go. Or I saw the let it go in the chat, but yeah, put it on there, sell them off, get some spare parts.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you want to do here. I think if you sold your 2020 firsts. You were able to get a QB2. You were able to get a wide receiver 2 like a Lockett or a Boyd. Then I feel good or better about this team. But if not, I would start selling. I would sell Kittle. I would sell AB. I would probably sell Corey Davis for what I can get, Henry, Ingram, and then rebuild. So it's you are this is like the epitome of a borderline playoff team that will never really compete for a championship unless you do something. So either you sell your picks for next year, which I think you could absolutely get a Matt Stafford, you could get a Tyler Lockett, and then like
what is Tyler Lockett worth in 2020 picks right now?
I would say probably a first and a second.
What about everybody else?
You find the right owner, you might be able to skate away with just the first.
But yeah, so I mean,
if you could wait though, because you said Boyd too. I mean, I think you got to be a little bit of patient. Wait and see the guy who gets off to a slow start because of a scheduling problem, and yeah, you can find that owner where you can get a deal.
But yeah, I mean, so if this wide receiver room was AB, let's say Boyd, Godwin, Fitz, Corey Davis, would you feel better about it?
I'd feel much better about it.
So and then let's just say they add Stafford there and get like a Noah Fant, a Darren Waller. I would feel pretty good about this team and its chances to compete.
So you have 4 firsts. You think you get out of those trades with 1 remaining? So you think you can get those deals done with 3 firsts?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do, because I think if you got Stafford and one of Boyd or Lockett, that would cost you about 3 firsts, and then you would have a first left over.
I think even though we said they don't have much depth at wide receiver that's quality, I think that they do have a unique amount of rookies, which could be enticing to other teams that have more depth at wide receiver. You might be able to package a couple of those rookies you're not sure of to another team that would like some youth, and you might be able to get a more of a sure thing on your team, like that wide receiver 2 or something that we were talking about. You might be able to move Hardman and one of the other guys out and try to get something just above them for a team looking to maybe trade like a third or something like that. You might be able to at least give yourself more useful depth.
Do you want to add like a 27, 28-year-old to this team though?
No, I don't mean necessarily older. I mean maybe a fringe guy like Jarvis Landry, who's still young, but maybe if if someone's stacked at wide receiver, but they would like to have a couple of youthful options. It could be an option, because they don't need all that rookie depth. I feel like they should be able to turn that into something. Just sitting on all of them all year just seems like sort of a waste. So I mean, I know it's something that someone who has an embarrassment of riches as a wide receiver, you might be able to work something out. If you're looking to unload, if you're trying to unload one of those veteran running backs too, it's like you could package them and try to increase the return maybe.
All right, J. Mike, Matt, you guys already know what this is. You know how this goes. Our final diagnosis: this team was a car. What type of automobile would it be? What do you have to do to get this baby humming the way it needs to be humming to win you championships and win you races this season?
I'll start this. I feel like this is like the probably like an early 2000s Camry. It's pretty nice, and it's gonna get you probably where you need to go. It's gonna get you there. The thing about it is, though, you've got pieces on this Camry that don't necessarily need to be there. Like you've got some 20s on there, probably spinners if it's George Kittle. Like you don't need to have 20s with spinners on a Camry. Like, why don't we take that? Why don't we take that and invest that into the transmission and the engine and like make sure that everything's running great to help not just get me where I want to go, but get me the extra mile. So that's kind of, take your Aaron Jones, break them down into like Duke and Christian Kirk, something of that nature to help me move forward in that fashion. So I like what you've got going on with the team. I think that there's more to be done to get you where you need to go, though.
I actually think you nailed it. I mean, I couldn't actually say it better. I was going to say, it's like a 2014 Kia Sorento. It's a newer car, but with some like older parts on it. Like they have this vintage spoiler and some pop Funkos on the dashboard. But eventually the car's going to crash and those things are going to like smash into your face. It's dangerous to drive around in a car like that, and he needs to do something about it. So swap out some of the dangerous parts and get yourself a reliable vehicle.
This is a Ford Pinto before it was recalled. Where like it'll get you to anywhere where you need to be, but you get in a car wreck, you lose a guy, like AB loses his goddamn mind and takes a hammer to your car.
He won't have his helmet on, that's for sure.
That's true. It takes a hammer to your car and then it explodes because they didn't protect the gas tank. That's what this is. So either you need to buy the little plastic piece that protects the gas tank that they created that didn't really do its job, buy a new car, or just run it into a brick wall and let it explode.
I think that was maybe a bit much.
See, you are.
I feel like it's more like going to run out of gas than burst into flames.
You are an environment conscious person. You wanted to go ahead and buy your Prius. You didn't do that though. What you did is you got a Volkswagen Golf. You heard some good things about Volkswagen and emissions, but you forgot that Volkswagen is already a company that's lied to you for years about their emissions and about what those cars are even having on the effect on the environment. This car is leaking all kinds of crazy fumes out of every possible orifice. This is one of those situations where it's just not as advertised. It looks nice on the outside, but you don't have it to doing the things that you actually want it to do. And just like Volkswagen lying to you, AB is going to lie to you. He's going to give you good points. He's going to give you great points for about a season. Then he's going to be gone as soon as he came. And I think that is a lot of your roster. So just as Matt was saying before, paycheck to paycheck, man. This car, I mean, you have like a diamond hood ornament with George Kittle on it that just doesn't belong. It's not supposed to be there. And so what you have to do is you have to split that up. You have to trade that up. You have to get those different parts. You have to get that catalytic converter that's going to make your car what you always wanted it to be. So you can be that person that can at least have the balls to admit that climate change is the thing that is real and is happening, unlike what is going on right now. But yeah, this is one of those situations that you really need to work on. I really do think that, I mean, we preach this constantly on the show. Worst position in sports, worst position in fantasy, worst position in anything. It's too bad to be good and too good to actually be able to rebuild that roster with those high picks. So for me, this is definitely one of those situations that you need to be proactive and kind of get after this early on before people are on to what is happening to this team at the end of the season. Because if this team does lose a few games and is out of the playoff hunt, you trying to sell AB at that point is not going to net you the same return that you would get just right now. So be very, very conscious of the times that you are doing that. But guys, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Dynasty Diagnostic for our first ever live show. It was an absolute blast. You can find me at Number Fire. You can find Sam at FF Statistics. You can find the majority of us at FF Mercs. I'm going to let Sam go ahead and plug that in just a bit. Obviously, I'm going to switch this over to our guest really quickly before we get into the last outgoing things, just so they can plug anything that they're working on this season that we should be aware of.
Want to take it away? Out for me? You can find me on Twitter at Matt Williams, MATTWI77IMS, no L's, just sevens. You can find me on FF Statistics, FF Mercs with Eton and Sam. I don't know why you weren't there, J Mike. Come on over.
You want to have your customers happy, and me helping someone draft.
Yeah, I mean, you
is not the move.
End up with
not
Sammy Watkins on your team.
Corey Davis.
Don't go anywhere. But yeah, I also host DF Statistics and at the Daily Blitz Podcast. J Mike, don't leave us.
J Mike is leaving in protest right now.
This is me live tilting right now. On Twitter at JMikeCheck, at JMICCheck, the Open Bar Podcast. Do the Dummy Blitz with the Dynasty Dummy. Shout out to both Gabe, Kyle, and Zach. Love those guys. And I'm just humbled for the opportunity to be able to join you guys again for my second time here on the show. So thank you guys for the time. I appreciate this. This was a ton of fun. And to be able to kick off your live show, first ever live show for you guys. Mm-hmm. And also, I have to add, and I know that we're long on time, but the fact that we're 44 episodes in and you guys both gave legitimate answers for the vehicle and what needed done just goes to show that there's hope, kids. There's hope in life. Don't give up. Sometimes it might take you 44 episodes to get where you need to be. And don't ever give up. Just don't. Keep
about
pushing.
the kids.
Keep
Stay
climbing.
Together.
Keep climbing, guys. I love it. I love it.
I love it.
All right.
Sam, talk about FF Marks before we get out of here.
Yeah. So Matt and I started a website called FF Mercs. It's a consultation service that we are trying to. I'm not going to read this ad because
it's such a good one.
John Hope
did a great job.
Whatever. But anyway, we do, and now that we're out of draft season, we do in-season help. We do weekly help. We do an entire season of help if you want to pay for that. We'll do start sits. We'll do waivers. We even do DFS for you. So if you want help
to win your car.
Yeah, we'll wash your car.
We'll take your grandma for a walk.
Walk the dog.
We're gonna take her. We're gonna take her for a walk. Anyway. We're not gonna go for a walk with her. We're gonna take her for a walk.
Anyway, so we aim to help you win weeks, to win your leagues, to win money. So give us a try. It's at ffmercs.com, at ffmercs on Twitter. And then you can just inquire about our services, talk to us, and hopefully we can help you out this season.
And listeners, please make sure that you are going to the Dynasty Diagnostic podcast feed on iTunes to give us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps the podcast grow and reach more listeners. We are starting a Patreon as soon as the season starts. We will have all the different tiers listed. We'll give a little bit of some clues, some context on Twitter to what you guys can get from signing up on our Patreon. We will also be moving to Wednesday releases during the season so you can get all of the information that you guys need for waivers, to start sits, to anything interesting that has happened in that previous week. We are going to be here for you this season. And of course, thanks for making it to the Dynasty Diagnostic Service Center today. Please be sure to keep up with your scheduled maintenance and catch us next time to ensure quality performance. See you on your next visit.